That night I took down the old painting in my study to repaint the wall before my wife's birthday. But behind the frame, there was a secret compartment carved deep into the wall. Inside were 4 passports with my wife's face under different names, along with a red USB drive. I opened the final file at 1:13 a.m. Then I heard her voice laughing. "He's old now. Just one more signature, and that's all we need." I froze, realizing I had never truly known this wife of mine. I'm so grateful you're here with me today. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Your city, your country, what time it is right now. I read every single one, and it means everything to me. This story contains fictional elements crafted for reflection and education. Any similarity to actual names or places is coincidental, but what it teaches you is worth keeping. I was taking down my late wife's painting when a piece of wood behind it shifted, revealing something that had been hidden in my wall for longer than my second marriage. Tuesday morning in November, Portland rain tapping the windows. I'd woken at 6:30, made coffee, and stood in my second-floor office looking at the seascape painting that had hung there for nearly 20 years. Evelyn's painting. My first wife had loved it, said the colors reminded her of the Oregon coast in winter, all gray and white, and that particular shade of blue that only comes when the sky can't decide between clearing and storming. I'm Arthur Whitaker, 63 years old, owner of a pharmaceutical cold storage chain here in Portland. That morning, I thought I was simply doing something kind. Marissa, my second wife, had been in Denver for 3 days at a medical logistics conference. Her birthday was in 5 days, and she'd mentioned the office could use fresh paint. Something lighter, she'd said. I thought 5 days until her birthday. Just take it down. Now get it done. The house felt different when Marissa wasn't here. Quieter. We'd been married 4 years. Met at a charity gala in 2014, married 6 months later. She was 42, then sharp and organized, worked in medical equipment procurement. Made me laugh in a way I hadn't since Evelyn passed in 2015. Paige, my daughter, hadn't attended the wedding. That still sat between us like a weight I didn't know how to lift. But standing there at 7:23, coffee smell drifting up from the kitchen, I wasn't thinking about Paige or absences. I was thinking Evelyn's painting. I should have taken it down years ago. I set my coffee on the desk and reached for the frame. The painting was heavier than I remembered. Solid wood frame oil on canvas, maybe 3 feet wide and 2 feet tall. I lifted it off the wall hooks carefully and set it down against the bookshelf. That's when the wood shifted. Not loose. Placed. A thin rectangular piece of trim along the wall, right where the painting had hung, moved when my elbow brushed it. I pulled the trim away. Behind it, a compartment. Small, maybe 6 inches wide and 8 inches tall, carved into the wall years ago with deliberate precision. The wood inside was darker than the surrounding wall, older. Inside the compartment, wrapped in soft gray cloth, a wine-red USB drive. I reached in and picked it up. Colder than the surrounding wall, heavier than it should have been. Small enough to fit in a shirt pocket. The cloth fell away just a square of felt. The USB drive sat in my palm, deep red plastic with a silver connector, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. Except this one had been hidden in my wall behind my late wife's painting in a compartment I'd never known existed. How long had this been here? How many times had I walked past this wall, looked at this painting, sat at this desk, working and never known there was something 6 inches away from my head, hidden? Evelyn made this compartment. She must have. This was her office first before she got sick. Before the dementia took everything. She'd carved this space, or had someone carve it, and she'd hidden something here. But why? I set the USB drive on the desk and reached back into the compartment. My fingers touched something else, smooth, rectangular. I pulled it out. 3 passports. I opened the first one. Canadian. The photo showed a woman with dark hair, brown eyes, professional smile. The name read Claire Bell, born 1978 in Vancouver. The face was Marissa's. I opened the second passport. British. Nora Vance, born 1976 in Manchester. Same face. Different hair color in the photo, lighter shoulder length. Third passport. American. Sandra Kowalski, born 1974 in Portland, Oregon. Same face. My wife's face. 3 different names, 3 different birth years, 3 different countries. I sat down in my desk chair and reached into the compartment one more time. There was one more item, a folded piece of paper, standard printer paper, creased multiple times. I unfolded it. A list. 9 names typed in a neat column. Beside each name, a city, a year, and brief psychological notes. Boston 2004, Chicago 2006, Austin 2009. The notes said things like recently widowed isolated and high net worth trusts easily and no close family excellent target. The seventh name on the list was mine, Arthur Whitaker, Portland 2014. Absolutely trusting, would not suspect if approached correctly. Weakness daughter, processed. Target 7. The number sat in my chest like a stone. 7. Not the first, not even close to the first. 6 before me. 6 other men, 6 other cities, 6 other years. And after me, 2 more names I didn't recognize, both marked with dollar amounts and dates that hadn't happened yet. Weakness daughter, processed. What did that mean, processed? I looked at the passports again, spread them on my desk in a line. Claire Bell, Nora Vance, Sandra Kowalski. 3 identities, 3 lives, all worn by the same woman. The woman I'd married 4 years ago. The woman I'd trusted with my home, my finances, my late wife's memory. The woman who'd called me 2 nights ago from Denver and said, "I miss you, sweetheart. Can't wait to be home." Portland rain kept tapping the window steady and cold. The wine-red USB drive sat beside the passport, still unopened. I hadn't plugged it in yet. Part of me already knew I didn't want to see what was inside, but I would have to look eventually. I sat on the floor of my office back against the wall where Evelyn's painting had hung for 20 years, holding 3 passports with my wife's face and 3 different names. The compartment gaped open above me, empty now, showing the dark wood inside that had kept these secrets longer than my second marriage had even existed. Target 7. The house was completely silent except for the rain. It took me 20 minutes to plug it in. I sat at my desk with the wine-red USB in my palm, turning it over like it might reveal something on the outside that would spare me from what was inside. The 3 passports were still spread across my desk. Claire Bell, Nora Vance, Sandra Kowalski. At 8:02 a.m., I plugged the USB into my laptop. The drive opened with 3 folders: video, assets, profiles. I clicked on video first. The folder contained hundreds of files, each time-stamped and labeled by location. Office_072-318-1403. Kitchen_0815. 12_0842. Garage_08120_1925. The dates went back to July, 4 months ago. I opened the first file. My office appeared on screen. This desk. The view from above and behind angled down at maybe 45 degrees. I watched myself sit here, typing, checking my phone. The timestamp read July 23rd, 2:03 p.m. I'd been working on a contract renewal for our Seattle facility that day. The video had no sound, but the angle was perfect. Clear view of the laptop screen if you zoomed in. Clear view of my face, my hands, everything on the desk. I opened another file. Kitchen August 15th. Me making coffee at 6 in the morning. Another file hallway. September 3rd. Me walking from bedroom to bathroom in a t-shirt and boxers. This wasn't old footage. These timestamps went back to July, but continued through October. The last file was dated November 4th, 2 days ago. I looked up slowly at the bookshelf behind me. The small black cylinder I thought was a smoke detector sat on the middle shelf tucked between 2 books about cold chain logistics. I'd never questioned it. Marissa had mentioned updating the smoke detectors when she moved in. I'd said, fine, whatever makes you comfortable. The device had a faint red light, blinking once every 3 seconds. It was recording right now. Every conversation I'd had in this room, every phone call about the business, every moment I thought I was alone. She'd heard all of it, seen all of it for 4 months. I forced myself to sit still, not to react, not to look at the camera directly, just to close the video folder and open the next one. Assets. The folder contained spreadsheets, financial breakdowns. Whitaker Cold Chain, LLC, current valuation $12.6 million based on 2017 audit, anticipated growth 4 to 6% annually. Stocks and bonds, $4.2 million across various accounts. Retirement accounts, $1.8 million. Life insurance policy through Northwestern Mutual, $3 million. Primary beneficiary Marissa Vale Whitaker, as of March 2015. The notes were color-coded, green for liquid assets, yellow for semi-liquid, red for complex transfers. Each asset had additional notes. The business transfer requires board approval, but board is nominal. 2 members inactive for 3+ years can be executed with signature authority. The life insurance, beneficiary clause, standard payout within 30 days of death certificate. My coffee had gone cold on the desk. Every single thing I owned, down to the life insurance beneficiary clause, down to the fact that my board members were inactive and wouldn't question a transfer. The notes read like a demolition blueprint. Not if, but when and how. If you've ever felt unsafe in your own home, you know the feeling isn't loud. It's quiet. It sits in your chest like cold water, spreading slowly until you realize you can't remember the last time you took a full breath. I closed the laptop. The camera on the bookshelf kept blinking. Red light, every 3 seconds. I picked up the laptop, tucked it under my arm, and walked out of the office. Down the stairs, through the kitchen, into the garage. My navy blue F-250 sat in the closed garage, same truck I'd driven for 6 years. I climbed into the driver's seat, closed the door, and set the laptop on the steering wheel. The garage was dark except for the glow from the screen. No cameras here, at least none I'd seen in the video folder. I opened the 3rd folder, Profiles. 6 files, each one a PDF document maybe 10 pages long. I opened the first one. Boston 2004. Gregory Thompson, 68, retired corporate lawyer. Widowed 3 years prior. 2 adult children, both living in California, limited contact. Net worth estimated $8.4 million. Psychological assessment: lonely, seeks companionship, makes decisions quickly when emotionally engaged. I opened the 2nd file. Chicago, 2006. Martin Foster, 61, commercial real estate developer. Divorced, 1 adult son, estranged. Net worth estimated $6.2 million. Assessment: distrustful of women, initially requires extended courtship period, values independence, but secretly desires partnership. Austin 2009, Colorado 2011, Texas 2012. Each file the same structure. Name, age, marital status. Net worth, psychological profile, approach strategy. 6 people before me. 6 lives cataloged like mine. I wondered how many of them were still alive. The 6th file was dated Houston 2013. The 7th file was mine. Portland 2014. Arthur Whitaker, 62, at initial contact owner, pharmaceutical cold storage chain. Widowed 2015, wife Evelyn, dementia. Net worth estimated $18.7 million. Psychological assessment: absolutely trusting, would not suspect if approached correctly, makes decisions based on emotional narrative rather than financial logic. Values kindness and consistency. Primary weakness: estranged daughter Paige, desires reconciliation, will prioritize family harmony over skepticism. Status: daughter processed, financial access established. Timeline: 24 to 36 months optimal. Processed, that single word on the screen. My daughter reduced to a checkbox on someone's list. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of my truck, rain starting to drum on the garage roof. Steady Portland rain, the kind that doesn't stop for days. Marissa's flight landed at 6. She'd be home by 7. I had less than 5 hours to decide who I was going to be when she walked through that door. The man who just discovered his entire life was a surveillance box and a financial spreadsheet. Or the man who'd take his wife's face in his hands, smile, and say, "How was Denver?" I sat in my truck in the closed garage, laptop balanced on the steering wheel, Portland rain drumming on the roof. Marissa's plane would land in 3 hours. I folded the laptop closed and looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, a 63-year-old man who just learned he'd been living in a surveillance box for 4 months. I needed to decide right now whether I was going to scream or whether I was going to think. I chose to think, which meant the first thing I needed to do was figure out how to disconnect 4 months of surveillance without her knowing I'd found it. I climbed out of the truck at 10:15, walked back into the house, through the kitchen, up the stairs, past my office door, without looking at the blinking camera on the bookshelf. The Wi-Fi router sat in the hallway closet behind winter coats. Small black box with 4 green lights. I unplugged it, counted to 60, and plugged it back in. 60 seconds. Long enough for the cameras to reset, short enough to seem like nothing. If she checked the logs later, it would look like a router hiccup. Portland internet goes out all the time in the rain. I had maybe 10 minutes before the system logged back on and started recording again. I went to my office, sat at my desk, and pulled out my phone. Scrolled through contacts to a name I hadn't dialed in nearly 2 years. Miles Avery. We'd met at a medical logistics conference in Seattle in 2015. Former federal financial investigator, 30 years tracing fraud before retiring. We'd stayed in touch through occasional emails. I'd sent him a wedding announcement when I married Marissa. He'd sent back a short note. Congratulations, be happy. I pressed call. Miles Avery, 65, former federal financial investigator, whom I'd met at a medical logistics conference 3 years earlier, picked up on the third ring with the calm voice of someone who'd spent 30 years listening to people describe the unbelievable. Arthur Whitaker, he said, caller ID, probably. It's been a while. Miles, I need help with something I can't quite believe is real. Silence, not empty. The kind that means someone is paying full attention. Go ahead, he said. I described what I'd found. The painting, the compartment, 3 passports with my wife's face and 3 different names. The victim list, with my name 7th labeled absolutely trusting weakness daughter, processed. The USB drive with camera footage from July. Hundreds of video files, office, kitchen, hallway. Asset valuations down to the beneficiary clause on my life insurance. Psychological profiles of 6 men before me. I kept my voice level, didn't editorialize, just the facts. Miles didn't interrupt, just that clinical silence, the sound of someone mentally cataloging evidence. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. How many cameras, he asked. At least 4, maybe more. How many victims on the list? 9 total, 6 before me, 2 after. What's the total asset value they documented? I closed my eyes. Just over 20 million. Another exhale. Arthur, this is a marriage-based property fraud scheme. Systematic, professional. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. If you've ever called someone for help after discovering your whole life was a performance, you know that first sentence is the hardest. Because saying it out loud makes it real. Hearing someone else confirm it makes it permanent. What do? I asked. Like, first thing, don't confront her. Don't change your behavior. Don't even side differently at dinner tonight. Everything you do from this moment is evidence. If she suspects you know, she'll accelerate whatever timeline she's on or disappear entirely. We need her to think you're still absolutely trusting. Absolutely trusting. They'd been right. And how do I act normal? I asked. You've been married 4 years. You know the routine. You smile when she walks in. You ask how Denver was. You listen to her talk about the conference. You don't ask different questions than you would have asked yesterday. You certainly don't mention paintings or compartments or USB drives. And then we gather evidence, real evidence, bank records, travel history, background checks on her identities. We find out if those 6 previous victims are still alive. We trace the money. We build a case that shows pattern and intent. How long does that take? Depends on how careful she's been. Could be days, could be weeks. But Arthur, listen carefully, at our age, affairs aren't chaos anymore. They're accounting. She's not running on emotion. She's running on a timeline. Everything she does is calculated. Every smile, every touch, every conversation about your health or your business or your daughter. It's all part of a structure. At our age, affairs aren't chaos anymore. They're accounting. The phrase sat in my chest like cold metal. What do you need from me? I asked. Miles was quiet for a moment. I heard papers rustling, a pen clicking. 2 things immediately. First, Marissa's flight schedule for the past 6 months. Every trip she's taken, dates and destinations. Second, the name of the conference company she works for. The one that supposedly sends her to Denver and Houston and wherever else. I have access to both, I said. Shared calendar email receipts. Good. Send those to me today if you can do it without being obvious. Don't search her computer. Don't dig through drawers. Just whatever you have natural access to. What are you looking for? Patterns, gaps, conference dates that don't match actual events. Cities she visited that don't have conferences at all. If this is what I think it is, her travel history won't align with legitimate work. It'll align with something else. I understood. The 6 previous victims. The cities on the list. Boston 2004. Chicago 2006. Austin 2009. You think she's still in contact with them? I said. Or their estates, Miles said quietly. Arthur, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you called me hoping to hear. No, I said. It's exactly what I needed to hear. Miles asked for two things before we hung up: Marissa's flight schedule for the past 6 months, and the name of the conference company she worked for. His voice had shifted from sympathetic to clinical. I recognized that shift. It was the sound of an investigation beginning. I had access to both pieces of information, and suddenly I understood why Miles wanted them. I sent Miles everything he asked for by 3:47 p.m. 14 flights in 8 months, pulled from our shared Google Calendar, along with the name of the conference company Marissa worked for, Apex Medical Logistics Partners. The data came from places she'd never hidden. Our shared calendar synced to both our phones. Her email receipts forwarded to our joint account for expense tracking. She'd never been secretive about her travel. Why would she be? I'd never questioned it. Conference organizer flies to conferences. Simple. Obvious. Except now sitting in my office compiling the list, the pattern looked different. 14 flights over 8 months. 4 to Austin, 3 to Denver, 2 to Chicago, 2 to Boston. 1 each to Houston, Seattle, and Phoenix. The Austin trips were always Tuesday through Thursday. Denver trips always included a weekend. Chicago trips short, never more than 2 days. I'd thought she traveled for work. I'd never questioned why a conference organizer needed to fly this much. I forwarded everything to Miles' calendar, exports, email receipts, the Apex Medical Logistics Partners website link. 3 years in business, based in Denver, specializing in healthcare supply chain conferences. Professional website. Real company. I attached the email and hit send. The office felt colder than it had that morning. Miles would find the pattern. I already knew what he was going to find. Austin 2009 on the victim list. Chicago 2006. Boston 2004. The cities weren't random, they were targets, previous victims, or current ones. I went downstairs at 6 p.m. and started making dinner. Noodles the kind Marissa liked with sesame oil and scallions. Routine, normal. The kitchen smelled like garlic and soy sauce. I set a pot of water to boil and checked my phone. Email from Miles. Subject line, need to talk soon. I opened it, standing at the kitchen counter, wooden spoon still in my hand. The email was short, clinical, 4 paragraphs that dismantled my marriage like an autopsy report. First paragraph. Apex Medical Logistics Partners is a real company. Their website lists all scheduled conferences for the current year. Austin had no conferences in March, June, or September, the months Marissa traveled there. The Denver conferences exist, but happened on different dates than her trips. She wasn't going to work Arthur. She was going to him. Second paragraph, ran background checks on the names from the passports. Claire Bell engaged to Dr. Raymond Kovach, 67 widowed cardiologist in Austin. Local society pages show engagement announcement from April 2018. Photo, attached. Third paragraph, Nora Vance living with Walter Brennan, 71, commercial real estate developer in Denver. Property records show she's listed as co-owner on his primary residence as of January 2018. Fourth paragraph, bank records show account in Boston. Under Nora Vance, name opened 14 months ago. Current balance $3.8 million. Money transferred in small increments over time. Professional. Patient. Below the text, an attachment. Engagement photo from the Austin Chronicle Society section, April 14, 2018. I clicked it. Marissa stood in a blue dress I'd never seen, smiling beside a gray-haired man in a suit. Dr. Raymond Kovach, his arm around her waist. Her left hand visible, showing a diamond ring on her 4th finger. Different ring than the one she wore when she was with me. The photo caption read, Dr. Raymond Kovach and fiancée Claire Bell announced their engagement. Trust doesn't collapse all at once. It goes in stages. First you learn they lied. Then you learn how much. Then you realize you're looking at a stranger. I set the phone down on the counter. The water was boiling. I added noodles, stirred them. With the wooden spoon, watched them soften in the heat. 3 names, 3 men, 3 separate lives running in parallel. While I was in Portland thinking about quarterly reports and cold storage maintenance schedules, she was in Austin wearing a blue dress and planning a wedding to a cardiologist. While I was making coffee in the morning, she was in Denver co-owning property with a real estate developer. While I was sleeping alone in our bed, because she was supposedly at a conference, she was building a life with someone else. Someone else. Multiple someone elses. I turned off the stove at 7:15. The noodles were done. I didn't drain them, just stood there looking at the pot, steam-rising sesame oil bottle still on the counter unopened. My phone buzzed. Text message, Marissa, flight delayed, will be late. Did you leave me rice? I stared at the message for 2 full minutes. Did you leave me rice? As if we were still the couple we'd been that morning. As if she was still the woman who'd kissed my cheek 4 days ago before leaving for Denver. As if I was still the man who'd believed her when she said the conference ran long. Miles's voice echoed in my head. Don't change your behavior. Don't even sigh differently. Everything you do is evidence. I typed 2 letters. Okay. The first lie I'd knowingly told her in 4 years of marriage. Maybe in our entire relationship. I'd never had reason to lie before. Never wanted to. Marriage was supposed to be the place where you didn't have to perform. Except she'd been performing the whole time. And now I was performing too. Okay, 2 letters I'd typed thousands of times. 2 letters that tonight felt like concrete. I hit send. The message showed delivered, then read. 3 dots appeared. She was typing. The dots disappeared. No response. I set the phone face down on the counter and looked at the kitchen. The pot of noodles now cold. The sesame oil I'd never opened. The scallions I'd chopped sitting on the cutting board, unused. The email still open on my laptop, showing Marissa Claire in a blue dress beside a man whose name I'd learned 10 minutes ago. The house felt different, not because she wasn't in it. I'd spent plenty of evenings alone when she traveled. The house had always felt like it was waiting for her to come back. But tonight it felt different, because I finally understood she'd never really been in it at all. The Claire in Austin was real. The Nora in Denver was real. The woman who came home to Portland and slept in my bed and asked about rice, I didn't know what she was. And she was coming home tonight. I called my daughter at 11:47 that night because I couldn't carry it alone anymore, and because 4 months of silence suddenly felt like cowardice. Marissa had come home at 10:15. She'd walked into the kitchen, set down her bag, smiled at me like nothing had changed. Long day, she'd said. I'd nodded, asked how Denver was. She'd reheated the cold noodles, eaten standing at the counter, told me about a difficult supplier at the conference. I'd listened, nodded, asked one follow-up question. Perfect normalcy, just like Miles had said. She'd gone to bed at 10:45. I'd stayed in my office door, closed lights off. At 11:47, I scrolled to Paige's number in Seattle. Paige Whitaker, my 32-year-old daughter and financial fraud attorney in Seattle, answered my call at 11:47 p.m. on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting beside her phone for 4 months. Dad. Not a question, just my name spoken with relief. Paige, it's late, I know, Dad, you found something, didn't you? She interrupted. Finally, the word hit me like proof. How long have you known? I asked. 6 months, Dad. I saw transactions that didn't make sense. Small things, but they added up. I sat down. What transactions? You called me in May. Mentioned refinancing the house. I asked for details. But when I checked the public title records, the refinance had gone through 2 months earlier than you told me. And the loan amount was $50,000 more than what you said. I didn't remember that conversation. Marissa had handled the refinancing. I hired a financial fraud specialist, Paige continued. Started pulling public records, property transfers, business filings, small discrepancies, patterns. So I tried calling you. You tried 17 times, Dad. Between May and September, Marissa always answered. Always said you were busy in a meeting on a call. You'd call back. You never did. The cold water feeling spread through my chest. I didn't get any messages, I said. I know. I figured that out around July, so I started emailing, texting. You'd respond, but the responses felt off, too formal, too brief. I tested it once, sent you a text, asking about Mom's painting the seascape in your office. You texted back saying you'd moved it to storage months ago. I never moved it, I said. It was on the wall until yesterday morning. I know. That's when I knew she was intercepting everything, reading your messages, responding as you, keeping me away from you. There's a moment when you realize your child has been protecting you instead of the other way around. It doesn't feel like love. It feels like failure. Why didn't you just show up? I asked. Because I knew you wouldn't believe me without proof. You loved her. You trusted her. If I'd shown up accusing your wife of fraud, with nothing but suspicions and public records, you would have thought I was jealous. You needed to see it yourself. She was right. A week ago, I would have defended Marissa. So I waited, Paige said. and I investigated, and I hoped you'd find something that would make you call me. I found something, I said. I told her about the painting, the compartment, the passports, the victim list, the USB drive, Miles's research showing 3 parallel lives. Paige listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Dad, I'm flying to Portland tomorrow," she said. "Don't tell her I'm coming." We hung up at 12:43 a.m. I sat in the dark thinking about 17 phone calls I'd never received, texts I had supposedly sent but never written. The next day, Wednesday afternoon, Marissa left for her office at 1 p.m., said she had paperwork to catch up on, kissed my cheek on her way out. I waited until her car was gone, then walked to the backyard. Owen Mercer, 61. My taciturn housekeeper and driver for over a decade stood in the garage holding a black hard drive, with the kind of silence that meant he'd been carrying a secret too heavy for words. He was washing my F25 navy blue paint, gleaming wet. "Owen," I said, "have you noticed anything unusual with Marissa in the house?" He stopped wiping, set down the cloth, looked at me for a long moment with that characteristic silence, the kind that meant he was choosing his words carefully. Then he walked into the garage storage room and came back carrying a small black external hard drive. "She thought I'd formatted this," he said. "I didn't." He handed it to me. The drive was cool, heavier than it looked. "What's on it?" I asked. 3 months of security footage, backyard cameras. She asked me to delete it in September, said the storage was full. I told her I deleted it, but I kept this copy. "Why?" Owen's hands shook slightly. First time I'd ever seen him anything but steady. "Because I'd seen her," he said. "July 14th, August 3rd, September 22nd, same pattern. 2 in the morning, she'd go to your office. I saw it on the camera feeds. She was taking photos of papers on your desk, using her phone flashlight. I kept thinking I should tell you, but I didn't think anyone would believe a housekeeper against his wife." Owen had watched for 3 months, silent, loyal, afraid. "I'm sorry, sir," he said quietly. "I should have said something sooner." Owen handed me the black hard drive and went back to wiping the car, his weathered hands moving in steady circles on the navy blue hood. I stood there holding 3 months of evidence in my palm, 2:17 a.m., timestamps my wife's silhouette in my office doorway, the camera angle showing her, bent over my desk with her phone's flashlight. The people closest to me had been watching her, while I'd been watching nothing, and Marissa had no idea they'd kept the proof. She came home at 7:14 Wednesday evening, and I heard the double tap of her brakes in the driveway, the same sound I'd heard 1,000 times before. Except this time, I knew exactly where she'd actually been. I stood at the kitchen counter cooking rice. Owen's hard drive sat in my truck in the garage locked in the glove compartment. The evidence was accumulating passports, victim lists, camera footage, Miles's research, Paige's 6-month investigation, Owen's 2:17 a.m. timestamps. Everything pointed to one conclusion. And now she was walking through the door. Marissa entered through the carport, rolling her small black suitcase, the same one she always used. Dark slacks, white blouse hair pulled back. She looked tired. Real tired or performed tired. I couldn't tell anymore. "Hey, hon," she said, setting down her bag. Traffic was terrible from the airport. She crossed the kitchen and kissed my cheek. Quick automatic. The gesture of 4 years of marriage. Her lips were cool. She smelled like airplane recycled air and that jasmine lotion she always wore. I noticed for the first time how her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "How was your week?" she asked, already moving to the counter, opening the mail I'd left stacked there. "How was Denver, the training session, Wies? It's long, too many breakout sessions, not enough coffee. You know how these things are." I did know, or I thought I knew. Except Denver didn't have a conference on the dates she'd been there. Denver had Walter Brennan, 71 real estate developer property co-owner, with a woman named Nora Vance. I turned back to the rice-added water, set the pot to simmer. "You must be hungry," I said. "Starving. Airplane pretzels don't count as food." She started unpacking at the kitchen island. Laptop, conference folder, business cards, water bottle. The routine movements of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Except now, I was watching for cracks in the performance. She talked while she unpacked. The conference company was reorganizing their vendor relationships. Her flight yesterday had been delayed 2 hours on the tarmac. The hotel's Wi-Fi was terrible, made it hard to check emails. I plated rice while she talked, added the leftover chicken from Monday. set the plates on the table. Her phone vibrated face down on the counter. She glanced at it, didn't reach for it, kept talking about the hotel Wi-Fi. I didn't look at the phone, didn't ask who was calling. We sat down to eat. The downtown conference next week, she said, spearing a piece of chicken. You're still handling everything for the company booth. Already done, I said. Sponsorship package signed, booth location confirmed. She relaxed visibly, shoulders dropped half an inch. The smile reached her eyes for the first time since she'd walked in. Good, she said. This one's important. National audience. Lots of visibility. National Medical Logistics Conference, November 14th. 8 days away. Miles had mentioned it when we talked. 300 attendees. Major industry event. I watched her hands gesture as she talked about vendor booths and networking opportunities. Watched her face animate when she described the keynote speaker lineup. And I realized I was seeing two people simultaneously: the wife I'd married 4 years ago, who'd made me laugh at a charity gala, and the woman named Claire Bell, who was engaged to Dr. Raymond Kovacs in Austin. Double vision that wouldn't resolve. If you've ever looked at someone you love and suddenly seen a stranger wearing their face, you know it's not loud. It's quiet, like double vision that won't resolve. You okay? She asked. You seem distracted. I'm just tired, I said. Long week. Well, I'm home now. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her fingers were warm, real. We can relax this weekend. Maybe go to that Italian place you like on Saturday. Sure, I said. That sounds good. Her phone vibrated again. This time she picked it up, glanced at the screen, set it face down again. Work, I asked. Just the airline. Confirmation email for my next trip. I didn't ask where, didn't ask when, just nodded and took another bite of rice. We finished dinner in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that meant we'd been together long enough not to need constant conversation. Except now the silence felt different, like we were both performing comfortable instead of living it. She helped me clear the dishes, rinsed the plates, loaded the dishwasher with the same practiced efficiency she always had. Everything in its place, everything routine. I'm going to shower, she said, drying her hands on the towel. Long day of traveling. Take your time. She left her suitcase by the door, left her phone charging on the counter, went upstairs. I heard the bathroom door close, heard the water start running. I stood there in the kitchen, listening to the water run through the pipes, the same sound I'd heard thousands of times over 4 years. The sound that meant my wife was home-safe familiar. The sound of routine, of normalcy, of marriage. Tonight it sounded different, like someone washing evidence off their hands. Like someone washing away Austin, Denver, Boston, Dr. Raymond Kovacs, Walter Brennan, the $3.8 million account, the 3 passports with 3 different names. I thought about Owen's footage, her silhouette at 2:17 a.m. bent over my desk, phone flashlight scanning documents. July 14th, August 3rd, September 22nd. The same methodical pattern she was using now. The water upstairs kept running, steady, methodical. The sound of someone washing off one life before stepping into another. I looked at her phone on the counter, black screen, charging light blinking green. She'd left it there like she always did. Trusted me not to look. Trusted me to be absolutely trusting, just like the victim list had said. I didn't touch it. The water shut off upstairs. I heard the shower door slide open, heard her toweling off sounds I'd heard 1,000 times. But tonight, I kept thinking about Owen's footage 2:17 a.m., her silhouette in my office phone, flashlight scanning my desk. The bathroom door opened. Steam drifted into the hallway. And I realized I was about to spend the night sleeping next to someone who'd been photographing my financial records while I slept. I had 8 days until the conference to figure out how to keep acting normal. I survived the night sleeping 3 feet from someone who'd been cataloging my assets for months. And by Thursday morning, I was pulling into PDX short-term parking to pick up the one person who'd tried to warn me. The night had been exactly what I'd expected: quiet, normal, suffocating. Marissa had fallen asleep at 10:30, her breathing settling into the familiar rhythm I'd listened to for 4 years. I'd lain there staring at the ceiling, thinking about Owen's footage showing her at my desk at 2:17 a.m., wondering if tonight would be the night she got up again. She hadn't. Just slept peacefully while I counted hours until dawn. At 6 a.m., she'd kissed me goodbye, said she had early meetings at her office downtown. I'd waited exactly 12 minutes after her car left, then driven to the airport. I saw Paige emerge through the security doors at 9:47 a.m., carry-on bag over her shoulder. She looked thinner than I remembered, professional in her Seattle work clothes, dark blazer slacks, the uniform of someone who spent their days in courtrooms and conference rooms. But when she saw me, her face changed, went from lawyer-focused to just daughter. We hugged for the first time in 4 months. She felt real in a way phone calls hadn't been. Solid, present. 4 months, Dad, she said into my shoulder. I'm sorry it took this long to get here. You tried, I said, 17 times. We walked to the F250 in silence, loaded her bag in the back, started driving towards Southeast Division Street, where she'd rented a temporary office yesterday, small space month-to-month, lease paid cash. Somewhere we could meet without cameras watching. Yan, she told me you were too busy with work to talk to your old man. I said merging onto a 205. Paige stared out the window at the gray Portland sky. I knew something was wrong when you stopped answering. That's not you. That's never been you. Even when Mom was sick, you always called back. I never got the messages. I know. That's when I hired the lawyer. When the messages stopped being relayed and your texts started sounding wrong. She told me about the May phone call, birthday conversation. I'd mentioned refinancing the house to get a better rate. Casual comment. She'd asked for details out of professional curiosity. When I'd sent her the paperwork, she'd checked the public title records habit from years of fraud investigation. The refinance had gone through 2 months earlier than I'd told her. The loan amount was $50,000 more. Small discrepancy, she said. Could have been nothing, but it made me look deeper. And once you start looking, patterns appear. We pulled into the parking lot at 1028, small office building, 2nd floor. Miles was already there, laptop open, files spread across the table. Paige, he said, standing to shake her hand. Your father's told me about your work in Seattle. Financial fraud specialist, ostesibi seps na lidior as 6 years, she said. Mostly elder fraud cases, property schemes, refinance scams, medical billing fraud. Then you'll recognize this. Miles turned his laptop to face us. Portland Police Bureau file, 2004. Sandra Kowalski investigated for financial fraud targeting a widowed Portland businessman. Case handled internally, no court filing, no conviction. The businessman had lost his house in a foreclosure that looked legitimate on paper, but had warning signs buried in the timeline. Sandra Kowalski, Miles said. Portland, 2004. She was here the whole time, Arthur. This is her hometown. I stared at the screen. Portland address. Local high school listed in background check. Sandra Kowalski had grown up 20 minutes from where I was sitting. The investigation died quietly. Miles continued. No charges, but the businessman lost everything. Same pattern you're seeing now. What happened to her? I asked. In 2005, Sandra Kowalski ceased to exist on paper. No death certificate. No forwarding address. Just gone. 6 months later, Marissa Vale appeared in Chicago. Completely clean background. Different social security number. Immaculate credit history. Financial fraud at our age works because it targets isolation. They separate you from your children first. Then they operate in the silence. Someone helped her disappear and reappear, Paige said, reading the file over Miles's shoulder. Professional identity creation, that takes money connections and expertise. Miles nodded, pulled up another file. The bridge between them, Calvin Rook. He placed a photo on the table, professional headshot. Man in his early 50s, gray at the temples, expensive suit. Delaware LLC filing showed him as registered agent for something called Apex Holdings Group. Calvin Rook, 53, Miles said. Appears in shell company paperwork for every one of Marissa's identities. Never charged, never convicted, but his name is always there. Just buried deep enough that you'd miss it unless you were looking. Paige leaned forward, pulled the photo closer. Her face changed. I know this man, she said. Miles and I both looked at her. What? I asked. I know this man, Calvin Rook. He's in a Seattle case I'm working right now. She pulled out her phone, scrolling fast, found what she was looking for, turned the screen to show us. Same face, same man, different photo but unmistakable. Boeing engineer. Paige said, her voice tight. 71 years old, retired, lost $2.3 million through a refinance scheme last year. We've been investigating for 8 months. Calvin Rook's name appeared in shell company paperwork, but he vanished before depositions. We thought he was a broker, maybe a middleman. But this... She gestured at Miles's files. The victim list, the timeline, the pattern. This isn't isolated, Dad. Calvin Rook isn't helping Marissa. Marissa is working for Calvin Rook. I know this man. 4 words that changed everything. Paige opened her laptop and pulled up the Seattle case file. Boeing Engineer 71 refinance fraud. Same shell company structure, same timeline pattern, same Calvin Rook signature buried in the LLC paperwork, just like Miles had found in my case. She looked at Miles, then at me. How many others are there? She asked. How many victims has he created before Dad? Miles closed his laptop slowly. I'll find out by morning, he said. Paige scheduled the neurologist appointment for 2 p.m. Thursday. And when she asked me to bring a packet of the herbal tea Marissa made me every night, I thought she was being paranoid until the doctor opened the sample and his face changed. Miles had stayed at the temporary office to keep researching Calvin Rook's network. Paige drove me to Northwest Portland in her rental car, a sealed Ziploc bag with the tea packet sitting in the cup holder between us. Moroccan blend. Marissa bought it monthly from the organic market on Hawthorne. Same brand for 2 years. I drank it every night at 9 p.m. while we sat in the living room, her asking about my day, me relaxing before bed. Dr. Garrett Sinclair, 44 independent neurologist in a Northwest Portland clinic, examined the herbal tea sample with the careful attention of someone who'd seen medication tampering before. He took my blood first standard vein draw, 3 vials. Then he disappeared into the back with the tea sample. Paige and I sat in the exam room not talking. What was there to say? We were testing whether my wife had been poisoning me. Either she had or she hadn't. Either way, the marriage was over. Dr. Sinclair returned 20 minutes later with a printout and the tea packet. The blood test shows diphenhydramine. He said, setting the papers on the desk. Not a dangerous level, but consistent exposure over months. Common antihistamine. Found in over-the-counter sleep aids. And the tea? Paige asked. Dr. Sinclair opened the Ziploc bag, poured a small amount of the loose tea onto a white tray, pointed to fine powder mixed throughout the dried leaves. This tea, someone mixed it in deliberately, he said. The distribution is too even to be accidental contamination. It's been carefully measured and blended throughout. I stared at the tea, the same tea I'd been drinking since July. 4 months of sitting across from Marissa at dinner, drinking what she prepared, trusting it completely. If I stopped drinking this today, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, would my memory come back? Dr. Sinclair paused. The effects of diphenhydramine are reversible. If you stop now, yes. The fatigue, the mild forgetfulness, those would clear in a few weeks. How long would someone need to be exposed to show symptoms? Paige asked. At this dose, consistently, 4 to 6 months would produce exactly what you're describing. Mild fatigue, slower reactions, occasional forgetfulness, nothing dramatic. Just enough that on a medical chart it would read as mild cognitive impairment. Every night since July, every night she'd handed me that tea and I'd drunk it, thanked her for it, kissed her goodnight afterward. Elder abuse through medication is invisible. No bruises, no broken bones. Just a cup of tea every night, handed to you by someone you love. The symptoms you described, Dr. Sinclair continued looking at his notes from my intake form. Forgetfulness, fatigue, slower mornings, they're exactly what low-dose diphenhydramine produces over time, and exactly what someone would document as early cognitive decline. I saw my regular doctor in September, I said. Dr. Raymond Pike. He asked about my memory, quick questions, wrote something down, never ordered any tests. Did he suggest further evaluation? Dr. Sinclair asked. No, just said to monitor it. Come back if it got worse. Paige's jaw was tight, hands clenched in her lap. Dr. Sinclair wrote out his findings, gave me a copy, sealed the tea sample in an evidence bag with his signature and date across the seal. You'll want this for legal proceedings, he said quietly. We left at 3:15, drove back to the temporary office in silence. Paige's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Miles was waiting with new files spread across the table. Bank records, medical records, the systematic dismantling of my life laid out in spreadsheets and PDFs. Dr. Raymond Pike, Miles said as we walked in. August 12th, $18,500 deposit to his personal account from an LLC registered in Delaware. Same shell company structure Calvin Rook uses. I sat down slowly. 1 month before my September visit, I said. Miles nodded. September 17th. Dr. Pike's preliminary note in your chart about possible mild cognitive impairment, based on a 15-minute office visit. No neurological testing, no brain scan, no second opinion, just observation and patient self-reporting. Paige pulled up a chair, opened her laptop. "This is the endgame, Dad," she said, her lawyer voice taking over. Clinical, precise. "If Marissa can prove you're cognitively impaired, even just on paper, she petitions the court for guardianship. Medical evidence from your longtime family doctor saying you have mild cognitive impairment, observable symptoms, documented forgetfulness." "But I'm not impaired," I said. "Doesn't matter. She has a doctor's note saying you might be. She has 4 months of you drinking that tea, probably acting a little slower, a little more tired, maybe forgetting small things. Anyone watching would see someone in early decline." Miles leaned forward. "Once the court grants guardianship based on medical evidence, she doesn't need your signature anymore, Arthur. She signs on your behalf, for everything. House transfers, business sales, bank account access, all of it. She signs on your behalf. You become a legal non-person. The court assumes she's acting in your best interest," Paige continued, "protecting you from making poor decisions while impaired. Except, she's not protecting you. She's liquidating everything you own with legal authority to do it." I thought about the asset valuations on the USB drive. Every account, every property, every piece of equity, all documented with transfer mechanisms and accessibility notes. "How long does guardianship take?" I asked. "If she files emergency guardianship claiming rapid decline, she could get a temporary order in days," Paige said. "Full guardianship hearing within a month." "Has she filed?" "Not yet, I checked. But the medical documentation is in place. The drugging is ongoing. She's building the foundation." Miles tapped his pen on Dr. Pike's bank statement. "She's waiting for something," he said. "Some trigger event or timeline. The conference next week, maybe. Once that's done, she might accelerate." I sat in that temporary office staring at the herbal tea packet Paige had brought from my kitchen. The same Moroccan blend Marissa bought every month from the organic market on Hawthorne. The same tea I'd been drinking every night at 9 p.m. for 4 months, while she sat across from me, asking about my day. The packet looked innocent, familiar, and I realized that tonight when I went home, she'd make me another cup. I'd have to drink it and act like nothing had changed. We sat in a small cafe on Belmont at 6:30 Thursday evening because I needed to show Paige something I couldn't show her anywhere with cameras, and because I needed to understand what daughter processed meant. I had 3 hours before I was supposed to be home. Marissa thought I was at the warehouse handling a refrigeration malfunction, the first deliberate lie I'd told her since discovering the truth. The cafe was nearly empty. Corner booth by the window, rain already starting. Paige ordered coffee. I ordered nothing. I slid the printed victim list across the table, my finger on the 7th line. Target 7, Arthur Whitaker. Portland, 2014. Absolutely trusting, would not suspect if approached correctly. Weakness daughter, processed. Paige read it, then read it again. Her hand tightened around her coffee cup until her knuckles turned white. "Processed?" she said quietly. "Like paperwork, like a transaction they had already completed." She looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fury, grief, confirmation of something she'd suspected. "Dad," she said, "I need to show you something. Messages I got from you last year." "Paige, I don't remember sending you any messages last year. Marissa always said you were too busy to talk." "I know, that's the problem." She pulled out her phone. Her hands shook slightly, turned the screen to face me. Messages from my number to hers. March through July, 17 messages total. I read the first one. "It's Paige, I need space. You're interfering in my private life." March 15th, 2018, 9:47 p.m. I never wrote that. I scrolled down. "I'm an adult. I don't need you questioning my decisions." April 3rd, 2018. "If you can't respect my marriage, we have nothing to talk about." April 29th, 2018. "Your mother would be ashamed of how you're treating me." May 17th, 2018. That one hit me like a physical blow. I would never say that. Not about Evelyn, not to Paige. I kept scrolling. "Don't call again until you can be supportive." June 8th, 2018. "I've asked you repeatedly to give me space. This is harassment." July 2nd, 2018. 17 messages, each one colder than the last. Each one from my phone number, time-stamped, delivered. My coffee was going cold. I couldn't remember ordering it. I got 17 of these between March and July, Paige said, each one colder than the last. Paige, I never wrote these. I never even saw these. I thought you stopped calling because you were busy with work. Marissa said, I stopped. Heard what I was saying. Marissa said. Marissa told me. Marissa explained. I know you didn't write them now, Paige said. But for 4 months, Dad, I believe my father didn't want to talk to me anymore. If you've ever been systematically separated from someone you love, you know the abuser doesn't make it loud. They make it gradual. They make you believe it was your choice. After the July message, Paige continued. I stopped trying to call. What was the point? You'd made it clear you didn't want to hear from me. Because I thought you were the one who stopped calling, I said. Every Sunday I waited. Marissa would say you texted that you were swamped with work. I tried calling 17 times. Every time she answered your phone, said you'd call back. Then these messages would come. We sat there looking at the phone screen between us. How did she send them? I asked. Access to your phone, probably, Paige said. Or remote access to your phone account. There are apps, services. It's not even that hard if you have the right access. I thought about Marissa setting up my new phone last year, transferring all my contacts and settings. I'd thanked her for it. She separated us, I said. Systematically, Paige agreed. Before she went after your assets, she went after your support system. Your daughter who might notice financial irregularities. Your daughter who works in financial fraud investigation. Daughter processed. Daughter processed, Paige repeated. Completed, done. Weakness neutralized. We sat across from each other as rain streaked the window, Portland's November darkness settling outside. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. I thought about every Sunday in those 4 months. Every week I wondered why Paige never called. Every birthday card I sent that got shorter replies. Every gap that widened without me understanding why. Paige had been pushed away systematically, deliberately, as thoroughly as if she'd been erased from my life. And I'd believed she was just busy, just distant. The silence between us held 4 months of Sundays I'd spent alone, wondering why my daughter stopped calling. I'm sorry, I said. For what? Paige asked. For believing it, for not questioning why you stopped calling. Dad, she forged messages from your phone. She answered every call I made. She created a wall between us using your voice, your number, your authority. This isn't your fault. Still feels like it. I know. The rain kept falling. The cafe was warm, smelled like coffee and damp wool. Safe, temporary, a bubble away from the surveillance and the poison tea. We sat in that cafe booth for another 20 minutes without speaking, rain tapping the window, her coffee going cold, my hands flat on the table beside the phone, showing messages I'd never written. When we finally stood to leave, Paige put her hand on my shoulder, the first time she'd touched me in 4 months, and I understood that some damage couldn't be undone, only acknowledged. I had to go home and drink poison tea across from the woman who'd stolen my daughter before she tried to steal everything else. I opened Evelyn's laptop at 11:30 Friday night because Paige had asked me that afternoon if I'd ever gone through my first wife's old files, and because I suddenly needed to know if Evelyn had seen what I'd been blind to. I'd survived Thursday night, come home at 9:45. Marissa had made tea, the poison tea I now knew about, and I'd drunk it while we sat in the living room talking about her day at the office. Performance upon performance. I'd poured half of it into the kitchen sink when she went to the bathroom, just enough that the cup looked empty when I brought it back. Friday had been more of the same. Normal routine, normal conversations. The weight of knowing pressing down on my chest with every word. Now it was 11:30 p.m. Marissa was asleep upstairs, and I was sitting in my office with Evelyn's old MacBook, pulling it from the bottom drawer of my desk, where it had sat untouched for 5 years. I'd packed it away 3 months after her funeral, July 2013. Couldn't look at it anymore because seeing it hurt too much. The laptop was dusty, the power cord stiff from years of being coiled in the dark. I plugged it in, opened the lid. The startup chime sounded like a voice from another life. Her desktop wallpaper appeared, the two of us at Cannon Beach Page, age 14, between us all three smiling. The date in the corner, March 2013, 5 years and 8 months ago. I stared at that photo. Evelyn's face, healthy in that picture before the final decline, before the cancer took everything. I didn't know what I was looking for. Just that Paige's question that afternoon had planted something I couldn't ignore. Did you ever go through Mom's files, her emails, her documents? I'd said no, too painful. Paige had nodded understanding, but something in her expression suggested she thought I should. So here I was. I opened her email. The password was still saved from years ago. Her inbox loaded slowly, 5 years of dormant messages, most of them spam by now. I clicked on the drafts folder. One message, unsent, dated March 14th, 2013. No recipient address, just a subject line, if something happens. I opened it. The body text was short typed with Evelyn's careful two-finger method. Arthur, if you read this then, I won't have time to say it directly. That woman didn't appear by chance in our lives. I've seen her in the hospital parking lot twice. I don't know what she wants, but I'm afraid. Ask someone you trust before doing anything. I read it 3 times. That woman. Hospital parking lot. Twice. March 2013. 1 year before, I met Marissa at the medical gala in June 2014. My hands were shaking. Evelyn had seen her, seen someone watching, seen danger circling while she was dying. And she'd tried to write a warning. Never sent it, never got the chance. The dead protect the living in ways we don't discover until it's almost too late. An unsent email, a locked drawer, a warning we're not ready to hear. I checked the dates again. March 14th, 2013. The draft was created 3 weeks before Evelyn's final hospitalization. She'd been in and out of the hospital for chemotherapy throughout early 2013, getting weaker, losing weight, losing hope. And during one of those visits, she'd seen a woman in the parking lot, twice. That woman didn't appear by chance. I pulled up the hospital records I'd kept from Evelyn's treatment, found the dates of her March appointments, March 5th and March 12th, 2013, both at Providence Portland Medical Center, the same hospital where Marissa claimed she'd worked in medical equipment procurement, the same hospital where she said she'd attended the medical logistics conference that led to the gala where we met. Except she'd been there a year earlier, watching Evelyn, watching me, waiting. I sat in the dark office with only the laptop screen illuminating my face, Marissa asleep upstairs in our bedroom, Evelyn's warning from 5 years ago, glowing on the screen. March 2013. Evelyn in chemotherapy, dying, slowly looking out hospital windows at parking lots, where a woman named Sandra Kowalski stood watching from a distance. Already planning, already targeting. Evelyn saw her, knew something was wrong, tried to write a warning, never sent it because she ran out of time. Hospitalized April 7th, 2013. Died April 23rd, 2013. I closed this laptop in July 2013 and never opened it again. 5 years and 4 months of silence. 5 years and 4 months of Evelyn trying to tell me from beyond death. And I'd been too buried in grief to hear her. I thought about the timeline. Evelyn died April 23rd, 2013. I met Marissa at the medical gala, June 12th, 2014, 14 months later. Except Marissa had been there all along, watching from hospital parking lots while my wife was dying, waiting for the right moment to approach, waiting for me to be vulnerable enough, lonely enough, trusting enough. She'd watched Evelyn die. Then she'd waited 14 months for my grief to settle into something manageable. Then she'd appeared at a gala, wearing a smile, and a story about medical equipment procurement. And I'd believed every word. 5 years. 5 years of silence that could have been a warning. If I'd opened this laptop in July 2013 instead of packing it away. If I'd been less destroyed by grief. If I'd been stronger. But I wasn't. I'd been broken, and she'd counted on that. Marissa was already there, watching, planning, while Evelyn was dying. I looked at the desktop picture again. Cannon Beach. The 3 of us. Evelyn's arm around Paige, my hand on Evelyn's shoulder, all of us smiling at the camera wind in our hair. Ocean behind us. March 2013, the month that photo was taken as desktop wallpaper. The month Evelyn saw someone watching from a parking lot. The month she tried to write a warning she'd never finish. 3 months before she died. 5 years before I found the warning. I sat there until 1 a.m. with Evelyn's email still open on the screen, her desktop picture showing the 3 of us at Cannon Beach. Before cancer, before Marissa, before everything fell apart, Evelyn had seen her, seen the danger, tried to warn me, and I'd closed this laptop in grief and never looked back. Upstairs, Marissa slept in the bed Evelyn used to sleep in. I closed the laptop slowly, carefully, as if Evelyn could still feel it. And I understood that everyone who'd ever loved me had tried to save me except myself. We met at the temporary office Saturday morning at 8 a.m., 4 days before the conference, because the time for gathering evidence was ending and the time for using it was about to begin. I'd spent Friday night with Evelyn's laptop, her warning about the woman in the hospital parking lot burning in my mind. Saturday morning, I'd woken at 6 a.m., made coffee, and told Marissa I needed to check on a warehouse issue. She'd believe me. Why wouldn't she? I'd been absolutely trusting for 4 years. I arrived at the SE division office carrying Evelyn's laptop and 5 days of accumulated evidence, USB files, Owen's hard drive, Dr. Sinclair's blood test results, screenshots of the forged messages Paige had shown me. Paige was already there. Legal pads covered in notes spread across the table in her neat attorney handwriting. Miles had his investigation files open on his laptop, bank records, property transfers, victim lists. The shift in the room was palpable. No more questions about what was happening, only questions about what to do next. I set the evidence on the table. That 4 days, I said. Wednesday is the conference. That's our window. Miles nodded. We have evidence. We have witnesses. We have their timeline. Now we need a strategy. I sat down across from him. Tell me how we stop them, I said. Not just Marissa, all of them. Miles closed his laptop and leaned forward. The conference on Wednesday is your advantage, he said. 300 attendees, medical logistics professionals, national event, public venue, everything documented and recorded. Marissa chose this location herself, thinking you'd be too intimidated to make a scene in front of your industry peers. I won't be, I said. I know, that's why we use it. But we need to be strategic between now and then. 5 steps. He pulled out a notepad, wrote as he talked. 1. No confrontation before Wednesday. You continue acting normal at home. She cannot suspect you know anything. I nodded. 2. Starting today, you need to act worse, more forgetful, more tired, more confused. Make Marissa think the diphenhydramine is working better than she planned. Boost her confidence. Make her believe victory is imminent. Paige looked at me. Dad, you have to perform decline. I understand, I said. Miles continued. 3. We prepare bait documents, legal papers that look like asset transfers or business restructuring. You sign them with special forensic ink that traces every scan, every copy, every digital transmission. When she sends those to Calvin Rook's network, we'll have proof of interstate fraud. 4. We let them draw in the entire network. Don't stop at Marissa. We want Calvin Rook there. We want Dr. Pike there if possible. We want everyone who's been part of this to either attend the conference or be connected to what happens there. And 5, I asked. Miles met my eyes. 5, you confront them at the conference. Public. Recorded. 300 medical professionals watching. She can't run, can't deny, can't make you disappear into a guardianship petition or a convenient accident. The irony is perfect, Arthur. She chose that venue herself. We're going to use her own stage against her. There's a moment when you stop being hunted and start hunting back. It doesn't feel like power. It feels like choosing to use the only weapon you have, left their own arrogance. How public, I asked. You're scheduled to give remarks at the opening session? Paige said, checking her notes. 10-minute slot, sponsorship acknowledgement. Marissa arranged it months ago, probably thinking you'd stumble through it, reinforcing the cognitive decline narrative. Instead, you'll use those 10 minutes to present evidence. In front of 300 people, I said. In front of 300 witnesses, Miles corrected. There's a difference. I thought about that. Witnesses, not just observers. People who could testify. People who couldn't unhear what they'd heard or unsee what they'd seen. What about the police, I asked. FBI's already coordinated, Miles said. Financial crimes unit. They'll be present but not visible. Once you make the presentation, they move in. But Arthur, this only works if you can hold it together for 5 days. 5 days of acting worse than you feel. 5 days of drinking that tea and pretending it's working. 5 days of sleeping next to someone who's trying to erase you. Paige's face was tight. Dad, can you do that? Can you act for 5 days? Act confused, act tired, drink that tea every night and pretend it's working. Estoon Stefando Verktoing. I thought about 4 years of marriage to someone performing 3 parallel identities. 4 months of being poisoned while sitting across from her at dinner. 5 years of never opening Evelyn's laptop because grief had paralyzed me. I met Paige's eyes. I've been acting for 4 years without knowing, I said. 5 days is nothing. The room was quiet for a moment. Miles made a note on his pad. Good. Starting today, you need to seem more forgetful. Lose your keys. Forget what day it is. Ask her the same question twice. Small things that build the narrative she wants to believe. I can do that, I said. And one more thing, Miles added. Between now and Wednesday, she's going to present you with documents to sign. Trust amendments, business restructuring papers, medical authorizations. Sign them. But sign them with the special ink Paige brought. Every signature you make becomes traceable evidence. Paige slid a pen across the table. Looked like a normal ballpoint. Forensic ink, she said. Shows up under UV light, leaves microscopic markers that prove when and where a document was signed. I picked up the pen. Felt like any other pen I'd ever held. Before we finish, I said the question sitting in my chest, finally forcing its way out. Miles, I need to know, is Dean Mallory involved in this? Miles paused. That pause told me everything. That's the next question I was going to ask you, Arthur, he said quietly. Miles didn't answer the Dean Mallory question, directly just said it was his next area of investigation, which meant he'd already started looking and didn't like what he'd found. Paige's face tightened. She knew Dean, too, had called him Uncle Dean. Growing up, remembered him at Evelyn's funeral, standing beside me when I could barely stand on my own. If Dean had betrayed me, it would be the oldest wound of all. Miles didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened his laptop fingers, moving across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who'd already started the search. Let me show you what I found. Miles's laptop chimed at 2:47 p.m., and the color drained from his face before he even finished reading. What is it? Paige leaned forward. He turned the screen toward us. The encrypted report header read, Subject Mallory Dean, Francis, Financial Vulnerability Timeline. I stared at Dean's name. Dean, who'd been my friend for 20 years, who'd stood beside me at Evelyn's funeral, who'd introduced me to Marissa with that proud smile like he was giving me a gift. My hands went numb. March 2019. Miles read aloud, Dean accumulated $340,000 in gambling debts across 3 Atlantic City casinos. March through August, escalating credit lines, comped suites VIP treatment, classic debt trap. The numbers blurred on the screen. 2019, the year Dean introduced me to Marissa. The debt was structured to balloon, Miles continued. By December 2019, with interest and penalties, he owed $470,000. Casinos were preparing legal action. Paige's voice was quiet. What happened to the debt? March 15th, 2020. Single wire transfer, $470,000. Debt wiped clean. Source Hearthstone Management, LLC, registered in Delaware. Miles pulled up another document. Hearthstone is a shell company, 15 layers deep, but I traced it. The ultimate funding source is an account controlled by Calvin Rook. I felt the room tilt. Dean sold me. Not just sold, Miles said. The transaction trail shows systematic information transfer starting January 2020. Dean provided Calvin's network with your medical appointment schedules, asset valuations, family vulnerabilities, daily routines. For 4 years, Arthur. Your best friend has been feeding them intelligence. Paige was scanning the documents. Wait, Dean introduced Arthur to Marissa in August 2019, right before the debt was cleared. Exactly. Miles highlighted a section. The introduction wasn't friendship. It was a job interview. Dean brought Marissa to that gallery opening because Calvin needed someone close to Arthur. The introduction was Dean negotiating the terms of his debt clearance. How do you measure 20 years? In the fishing trips where Dean and I talked about everything and nothing. In the late-night calls when Evelyn was dying and he just listened. In the 1,000 small moments when I believed someone gave a damn about me. Not for what I had, but for who I was. You can't measure betrayal in dollars. But apparently Dean had found the exact figure, $470,000. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside Saturday afternoon, traffic moved with oblivious normalcy. People going about their lives, trusting their friends, believing the world made sense. There's more, Miles said quietly. I didn't turn around. Of course there is. The reports Dean provided weren't passive. He documented your grief patterns after Evelyn died. He noted when you seemed confused when you forgot conversations. He helped them build the cognitive decline narrative by feeding them observations about your mental state. I remembered the seafood restaurant 4 months ago, Dean's careful questions. You seem tired lately, Arthur. Are you sleeping okay? I noticed you told me the same story twice last week. I'd thought he was concerned, but he'd been taking notes, gathering evidence, building their case. The night he introduced us, I said my voice strange in my own ears. Dean pulled me aside before I met Marissa. He said, "I found someone special for you. Trust me on this." And I did. Because that's what friends do. Paige came to stand beside me. "Arthur," he averted his eyes. I said, "Last time I saw him, at the restaurant when he was asking about my memory. He couldn't quite look at me when he asked the questions. I thought he was uncomfortable watching me decline. But he was uncomfortable watching me trust him while he sold me." Miles cleared his throat. "There's one more thing. The forensic accountant found it an hour ago." I turned. "What?" "The Hearthstone account that paid off Dean's debt. It's the same account that funded Marissa's engagement ring, the $47,000 purchase at Cartier in February 2020. Miles met my eyes. "Calvin didn't just buy Dean's cooperation and Marissa's performance. He bought your marriage from both sides. The engagement ring was purchased 3 weeks after Dean's debt was cleared. It was all one transaction." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt something inside me calcify, turning from flesh into stone. Every memory reframing itself. Every moment of trust revealed as theater. Dean's best man speech at my wedding. Marissa's tears when I proposed. Both of them acting. Both of them paid. "And the conference is Wednesday," I said. My voice sounded calm, distant. "Will Dean be there?" "He's listed as attending," Paige confirmed. "He RSVP'd for the keynote." "Good." I returned to the table. "Add him to the witness list. I want him in that room when we reveal everything. I want him to watch it all collapse." Miles nodded slowly. "Arthur, there's something else we need to discuss. Someone who might be able to help us understand the full timeline." He pulled an envelope from his briefcase. "This arrived at my office yesterday. It's from Tessa Whitaker. She was Evelyn's nursing colleague for 15 years. She says she has information about warnings Evelyn tried to give you before she died. Warnings about people you trusted." I took the envelope. The postmark was dated November 8th. Inside, I could see the edge of handwritten pages. "She wants to meet tomorrow," Miles said. "She says she promised Evelyn she'd wait until you were ready to hear the truth. She thinks you're ready now." I stared at Evelyn's colleague's name. Another piece of the past reaching forward. Another truth waiting to shatter what I thought I knew. "Tomorrow," I agreed. "Let's hear what Evelyn was trying to tell me." Miles and I agreed it was too risky for me to meet Tessa directly. If they were watching me as closely as Dean's reports suggested, any new contact would raise flags. Paige went instead alone to a cafe in Portland where Tessa had asked to meet. I knew the woman walking toward my cafe table was terrified before she even sat down. Her eyes scanned the room twice. Her hands trembled as she set down her purse. She wore scrubs under a jacket, hospital ID clipped inward so I couldn't read the name. "Tessa Wynn." I kept my voice low. She nodded. "You're Paige. Thank you for meeting me. I can't talk to your father. They're watching him every appointment, every call, every visitor. If I contact him directly, they'll know." Tessa Wynn was 51, a registered nurse who'd worked alongside my mother Evelyn for years. Now she sat across from me, looking like someone who'd been running for a very long time. "Who's watching?" I asked. "Marissa reports daily. Dean sends weekly summaries. There's a rotation of people your father doesn't notice. The gardener, the mail carrier, a complete surveillance network." "How do you know this?" "Because I'm part of it." Her voice broke. "I report on your father's health twice a month. Cognitive status, physical decline, medications, everything." "Why, my brother made mistakes 15 years ago. Calvin Rook has the sealed evidence. If I don't report on your father's health, my brother goes to prison. Leverage, everyone's pressure point." "How long?" I asked. "Since 2016. Since your mother died and Marissa moved in." Tessa looked at me directly. "Evelyn knew something was wrong with Marissa before she died. She asked me to watch out for your father. But I was already trapped." The cafe noise felt distant. "There's something else." Tessa pulled out her phone, showed me a photo. An older man beside a lake. Kind eyes, weathered face. "My father, Richard Wynn. He died in 2007, broke and alone in a VA nursing home. He'd lost everything Savings House dignity. He spent his last years thinking he'd failed his family." I stared at the photo. "What happened?" "Marissa happened. He was victim number 3. She married him in 2004, divorced him in 2006. By the time she left, he had nothing. He died thinking he'd been a fool. You knew what she was. I knew what she'd done to my father. When Calvin showed up in 2016 with my brother's files and a job offer, I understood exactly what I was enabling. Tessa's eyes filled. I became exactly what killed him. I had no choice, but I still became it. Some secrets you keep to protect others. Some you keep because admitting them means admitting you failed. I sent a letter, Tessa said. In 2008 to your father's office, anonymous, handwritten, warning him about Marissa, her pattern, telling him to investigate. I never knew if he received it. The cafe tilted. I reached into my purse, pulled out the worn envelope I'd carried for 10 years, the one addressed to Arthur Whitaker, October 2008. The one I'd opened when I was 17 because I was nosy and angry about my father marrying someone barely older than me. I slid it across the table. Tessa stared at her own handwriting. You have it. I was 17. I opened it first. I read the warning about Marissa's pattern, the plea to investigate before it was too late. My voice felt strange. I never told him. I convinced myself you were jealous, trying to sabotage his happiness. I threw away the chance to protect him. Before I tell you what that anonymous letter actually said, the one I opened when I was 17, comment A, if you think I should have told my father immediately, or B, if you would have hidden it too. Add one short reason why. Please note, some details here are recreated for storytelling impact, but the lesson is what stays. Tessa's hand covered mine. You were 17. I was the adult who could have done more. We both failed him, Paige, but we can still help him now. She pulled a black USB drive from her jacket, set it between us. Complete victim list, 9 names, 2 marked deceased, 1 marked suicide, 2015. That one's Victor Hale. I picked up the drive. Who was he? Victim number 6, widower 73, 8 million net worth. Marissa married him in the 2014. He was dead by 2015. Ruled suicide, gunshot note, estate transferred. Closed case. How many people does it take to build a fraud empire? 9 victims, 3 enablers, 1 architect, and how many to burn it down? Why tell me this? I asked. Because Victor Hale didn't die. The suicide was staged. He's alive, hiding for 3 years, and he has the original evidence against Calvin Rook, documents, financial trails, everything. If you can find him and convince him to testify, you can dismantle the entire network. I called my father and Miles immediately. By 6 p.m., we were in the temporary office, the black USB displayed on screen. 9 names, 9 devastated lives, 2 graves, 1 ghost. Miles pulled up Victor Hale's last known information, disconnected phone number from 2015 P.O. Box in Montana Digital Trail, ending the day he died. Then Tessa's hand moved across the table pen, scratching on napkin a 10-digit number area, code 406. He calls me once a year, she whispered. To confirm I'm still alive, still trapped. He'll answer for you. But Victor spent 3 years hiding because he knows what Calvin does to people who threaten him. Convincing him to surface won't be easy. I stared at the Montana number on the napkin, a dead man's phone, a ghost's lifeline, our last chance to turn a victim into a witness. Before I tell you what that anonymous letter actually said, the one I opened when I was 17, comment A if you think I should have told my father immediately, or B if you would have hidden it too. Add one short reason why. Please note, some details here are recreated for storytelling impact, but the lesson is what stays. I called the Montana number that night. Victor Hale answered on the 3rd ring, voice flat. Who gave you this? When I said Tessa Wynn's name, he was silent for 30 seconds. Then, Billings. Route 87 Diner, Tuesday 2 p.m., come alone. The man sitting in the last booth of the Montana Diner looked nothing like his 2015 photo, 20 pounds lighter, hair gone, gray eyes that never left the door. I slid into the seat across from him. His hand stayed under the table. Victor Hale. That name's been dead 3 years. His voice was rough, unused. You being here means I might need to die again. I came alone. You think alone matters? He nodded toward the parking lot. I've been watching that lot for an hour. Memorized every car, every license plate, every face that walked through that door. You drove a rental Chevy Montana plates, probably picked up at Billings Airport this morning, which means someone knows you're here. My investigator arranged the meeting, Celeste Monroe. Victor's jaw tightened. Celeste Monroe is very good at her job. Took her 3 years to find me. That terrifies me, because if she can find me, so can they. The waitress appeared. Victor ordered coffee black. I did the same. We waited until she left. Tessa said, "You have evidence," I said quietly. Victor Hale was 66, skeletal thin, wearing work clothes that had seen too many warehouse night shifts. This was a man who'd owned a Texas energy company worth millions, who'd lived in a house with a view of the hill country, who'd had a name that meant something. Now he worked under an assumed identity in a state where nobody asked questions. Evidence of what? He asked. Marissa Vale, Calvin Rook, the network that's been running this operation for 15 years. "You're number 9 on the list," Victor said. "I was number 6. You know what happens to men like us." "I know what they want to happen. I'm trying to stop it." Victor studied me. "How much did you lose?" "Nothing yet, but they've positioned themselves to take everything 18 million in assets, full guardianship authority, medical power of attorney. The paperwork's already drafted." "Smart. They're getting better." Victor's hand finally came out from under the table. Empty. With me it was crude. Married in 2014, divorced in 2015. By the time the estate settlement cleared, I had nothing. She took the company, the accounts, the properties. 8.7 million gone. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Victor's eyes hardened. "I wasn't innocent." The coffee arrived. We both waited again. 2009, Victor said quietly. "Houston. Man named Gerald Reeves, 68, widower, owned commercial real estate. Marissa and I worked together. She was the romantic angle, I was the business partner, who validated the investment opportunity. We took him for 400,000. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You helped her." "I helped her." No shame in his voice, just fact. "Split the money, went our separate ways. I thought we were partners." 3 years later, she showed up at my office with a smile and a business proposal. By the time I realized what was happening, she'd already embedded herself in my company, my finances, my life. Victim and accomplice aren't opposites. Sometimes they're the same person separated only by time and whose turn it is to bleed. "Das, why fake your death?" I asked. "Because Calvin Rook doesn't like loose ends. I had evidence copies of transactions, email, trails, recordings. I was stupid enough to threaten exposure. 2 weeks later, my brakes failed on I-35. I survived. The mechanic found the cut line. That's when I understood I could fight and die or disappear and live. You chose to disappear. I disappeared on purpose. Left behind a note, arranged everything so no one would question it. My brother took care of the funeral and the ashes. To the world, I've been dead ever since." He leaned closer. "So, tell me, what exactly do you want from me?" "Proof of the first victim. Sandra Kowalski, 2004. Medical equipment fraud. Tessa said you have the original documentation." Victor reached into his jacket. For a moment I tensed, but he pulled out a flash drive, set it on the table between us. "I keep it all," he said. "Every victim I know, about every transaction I witnessed or participated in, every piece of evidence I collected. Because someday, I might need it to survive." "I need Sandra's files." "Why her specifically?" "Because she's the beginning. The first victim establishes the pattern, proves this isn't accident or coincidence. It's a system." Victor slid the drive toward me. "Wire transfers, forged documents, email exchanges between Marissa and Calvin planning the approach. It's all there. But I have one condition." "Name it." "I stay dead. You don't put me on a witness stand, don't put my name in court documents, don't tell anyone where I am. You just need the files to exist. Let them speak for themselves." "Agreed." He stood, dropped cash on the table for the coffee. "Good luck, Arthur. You're gonna need it. Calvin Rook has been running this operation for 20 years. He doesn't lose. He hasn't faced someone who knows he's being hunted." Victor almost smiled. "No, I suppose he hasn't." I flew back to Portland that evening. By the time I walked through my front door at 8:45 p.m., Marissa was waiting in the living room with a leather folder. "Perfect timing," she said brightly. "I have the trust restructuring papers ready. Just needs your signature." 47 pages. Trust amendments, tax protection clauses, asset reassignment provisions. The language was dense, professional, completely opaque. Page had prepared special legal ink, nearly invisible under normal light, but traceable under forensic analysis. Any scan or photocopy would carry a unique identifier. I signed where Marissa pointed, here, here, and here. Initial the amendment pages. My hand shook slightly. Not acting just the weight of knowing that every signature was bait, every initial was permission for them to think they had won. Okay. Marissa collected the papers, relaxed for the first time in days. Done. That's everything I asked. That's everything. You're protected now. She smiled, touched my hand. I'll file these tomorrow, have everything recorded by Wednesday. She kissed my forehead, went upstairs. I heard her close the bedroom door, heard the muffled sound of a phone call. Paige emerged from the kitchen, pointed to the small recording device hidden in the bookshelf. We listened together. Marissa's voice clear through the speaker. Done, Wednesday conference. Calvin Rook's reply, smooth and confident. Good. I'll be there. The trap was set. Bait in the water, predator circling. Wednesday would determine who was hunting whom. I stood at the bedroom window, watching Marissa's car leave for her late meeting, probably celebrating with Calvin. In 48 hours, the National Medical Logistics Conference would open. 300 witnesses. One stage, no exit. The 48 hours collapsed into controlled movements, maintaining confusion at dinner, fumbling with pill bottles, while Marissa watched, sleeping in separate rooms like we had for months. By Wednesday morning at 6:30 a.m., I was exactly where I needed to be. Marissa's hands on my tie felt the same as they had for 4 years, gentle, practiced, intimate, and I knew this would be the last time. She stood in front of me in the kitchen, adjusting the navy blue silk with the concentration of someone who'd performed this ritual hundreds of times. The morning light caught the gold bracelet on her wrist, the one I'd given her for our second anniversary back when I still believed. Today is important, Arthur. Her voice was soft, encouraging. You just need to stand there, look confident. I'll handle everything else. I trust you, I said, letting my eyes drift slightly. I always have. She smiled, kissed my cheek. The tenderness was real. I could feel it in the way her hand lingered on my shoulder, the way her thumb smoothed the fabric of my jacket. She could afford to be kind this morning, because she believed I was walking into my own destruction. By evening, she thought I would be legally incompetent, stripped of authority, powerless. She could be generous to a man who had already lost. You're going to do great, she said. Just remember to speak slowly. Take your time if you lose your place. Everyone understands. What if I forget what to say? Then I'll be right there in the front row. Just look at me. I'll help you through it. I nodded, played the part of the grateful husband one last time. We arrived at the downtown Portland Conference Hotel at 8:15 a.m. My phone buzzed. Paige. Desmond Reed account freeze order signed. Miles and team are here. You just go on stage. I deleted the message, slipped the phone back into my pocket. Marissa took my arm as we entered the grand hall. 300 seats arranged in curved rows. LED screens flanking the central podium chandelier. Lighting casting everything in warm gold. The National Medical Logistics Conference keynote venue, the stage where Whitaker Solutions had been invited to present on healthcare innovation partnerships. The stage where everything would end. The hall looks beautiful, Marissa said. You'll do great up there. People were already seated, filling the rows. Industry professionals, healthcare executives, logistics managers, 300 witnesses. I scanned the room, systematically counting. Marissa beside me in a black dress, hand on my arm, playing the supportive wife. Calvin Rook in the third row, blue suit, perfectly groomed. He wasn't looking at me, too confident to bother. Dean Mallory near the side door, the position of someone ready to leave quickly. My friend of 20 years, who'd sold me for less than $500,000. Dr. Raymond Pike in the back row, the physician who'd documented my cognitive decline in exchange for research funding. Eric Vaughn sitting next to Desmond Reed, the attorney and accountant who'd structured the legal trap, positioned to witness its completion. How many people does it take to destroy one man? I counted 9. How many witnesses does it take to rebuild him? 300. Miles was somewhere in the hall. I'd been told not to look for him, not to make any acknowledgement. Paige was positioned with the legal team near the back entrance. The forensic accountant, the FBI contact, the court liaison, all in place. Everyone was here. The conspirators who thought they were witnessing my final humiliation. The witnesses who would see the truth. The law enforcement who would act on what they heard. None of the people who betrayed me realized they were the ones with no exit. Look, Marissa whispered, gesturing. Your friends are all here. Dean drove 2 hours to support you. That's kind of him. Everyone who cares about you showed up, Arthur. That's what today is about, community support connection. I almost laughed. She'd arranged for my entire network of betrayers to attend so they could witness the final act. so they could see me fail publicly, see the cognitive decline confirmed, see the guardianship justified. She'd wanted an audience for my destruction. She'd gotten one. The conference moderator stepped to the podium at 8:45 a.m. Sharon Fielding, 62. Conference director for 15 years. She tapped the microphone twice. Good morning. We're honored to begin today's keynote session with a true pioneer in healthcare logistics innovation. For 25 years, Whitaker Solutions has set the standard for medical supplies and chain management, serving over 200 hospitals across the Pacific Northwest. Please join me in welcoming the company's founder and CEO, Mr. Arthur Whitaker. Applause filled the hall. Polite professional, the sound of 300 people who had no idea what they were about to witness. Marissa squeezed my hand, leaned close. You've got this. She looked at me with the perfect expression of a proud wife, supportive, loving, invested in my success. 4 years of practice had made the performance flawless. Marriage is the longest con. 4 years of playing a role so convincing, you forget which performance is real. I stood, let her hand slip from mine. The applause continued as I walked toward the podium. Each step measured shoulders slightly hunched, the posture of a man carrying uncertainty, the physical manifestation of cognitive decline. I'd practiced this walk for 8 days, perfected every detail. The slight hesitation before stepping up to the platform, the way my hand gripped the edge for support, the moment of confusion as I adjusted the microphone. 300 faces watched. Marissa's smile never wavered, confident and serene in the front row. Calvin Rook checked his phone, already bored. Dean Mallory shifted in his seat, uncomfortable but committed. I gripped the podium, let my hands shake slightly, the tremor of a man losing control. The hall quieted. The LED screens flickered to life behind me, ready to display whatever presentation I'd loaded. I looked out at the audience, let my eyes drift across the faces, let them see a man struggling to remember why he was standing here. Marissa nodded encouragingly. I cleared my throat, leaned into the microphone, and began. My voice came out exactly as I'd practiced, slightly uncertain, the tremor of a man who'd forgotten his notes. The microphone carried it across 300 faces, all waiting to see what happened next. Do you know the exact moment a performance ends and the truth begins? I gripped the podium, let my hand rest on the polished wood. The trembling was real now, not from confusion, but from adrenaline, from the weight of knowing that every word from this point forward would either free me or destroy me. I scanned the audience. Front row Marissa in her black dress posture, perfect, watching me with the expression of a proud wife. But her eyes weren't on my face. They were on the leather folder sitting on the podium beside the microphone, the one she'd placed there this morning before we left home. The folder containing 47 pages of trust restructuring documents, asset transfers, guardianship authorizations, all requiring my signature. She expected me to open it right now, to fumble through the pages in front of 300 witnesses, to sign away my authority in a public ceremony that would legitimize everything. A confused man supported by his loving wife, making the responsible choice to protect himself from his own failing mind. Third row Calvin Rook in his blue suit, checking his watch, like a man with better places to be confident this would be over in minutes. Left wing near the sound booth. Page caught my eye, nodded once. Ready? I took a breath, leaned into the microphone. Thank you for being here, I said, voice wavering slightly. I know you came to hear about healthcare logistics innovation, supply chain efficiency, partnership models. Polite attention, a few sympathetic smiles from people who had heard I was struggling. But I want to tell you all a story instead, about a painting and a secret compartment in the wall. Marissa's posture shifted subtle, but I caught it, a straightening of her spine, the first flicker of something that wasn't confidence. Calvin stopped checking his watch. The room leaned forward. My late wife Evelyn loved that painting, I continued. Hung it in our bedroom 20 years ago. A landscape, nothing special, but it was hers. I never moved it, never touched it. I never knew what it was hiding. 300 people watching, silent now. 4 weeks ago, I came home and found the painting on the floor, not fallen, removed, carefully, professionally. The wall behind it had been opened, a compartment I didn't know existed, cut into the drywall, sealed, hidden for years. I paused, let the details settle. Someone had accessed that compartment, someone who knew it was there. Marissa's hand moved to her lap, fingers interlaced, the posture of someone trying to appear calm. I looked inside, I said. Found something that wasn't supposed to be found yet. Not for another few weeks, I think. Maybe not until after today. Every story has two audiences, the one that doesn't know how it ends and the one that does. The audience in the seats didn't understand yet. They were listening to what sounded like the confused rambling of a man losing his thread, talking about paintings and walls when he should be talking about medical logistics. But Marissa understood. Calvin understood. They knew exactly what I was describing, and they knew I wasn't supposed to have found it 4 days early. The compartment was empty when I looked. I continued, my voice gaining strength, now the tremor fading. But not quite empty. There were marks in the dust, the outline of something small, rectangular. Something that had been hidden there for a long time and recently removed. I reached into my jacket pocket. Marissa's eyes tracked the movement. Her breath caught. I heard it through the silence, the tiny intake of air that meant she'd just realized what was about to happen. "I have good security cameras," I said. "Most people forget about the ones in the bedroom hallway, angled just right to catch anyone approaching that wall." My hand closed around the small rectangular object in my pocket. I watched the footage, saw who removed the painting, saw who opened that compartment, saw what they took out and where they went with it. Calvin Rook's face had lost color. Not panic, not yet, but the recognition that something had gone wrong with a plan that should have been flawless. "Then I did something interesting," I said. "I went looking, and I found what had been hidden." I pulled the wine-red USB drive from my pocket, held it up so the stage lights caught the deep red plastic, the silver connector. 300 faces focused on the small object in my hand. You don't prepare for moments like this. You just survive them and hope the truth is sharper than the lies. "This," I said, quietly placing it on the white podium where everyone could see it, "is what was hidden behind Evelyn's painting for 4 years. Not mine. I never put it there. But I think someone in this room knows exactly what's on it." The silence was absolute. No rustling papers, no shifting seats, no coughs or whispers. 300 people holding their breath. The wine-red USB sat under the LED stage lights, impossibly small, impossibly visible. Physical evidence, public evidence. Something that couldn't be denied or explained away or dismissed as the confused memory of a declining mind. Marissa's hand gripped the armrest of her seat, knuckles white. Calvin Rook's hand moved toward his phone. Dean Mallory, in his seat near the door, looked like a man who just realized the exit was locked. Dr. Pike in the back row sat frozen. Eric Vaughn beside Desmond Reed exchanged one quick glance, the language of lawyers recognizing disaster. 4 years of surveillance footage. I said, my voice steady now, clear, no tremor at all. Travel records, financial transactions, medical assessments, asset transfers, every detail of a very carefully constructed plan. All organized, all documented, all waiting to be discovered at exactly the right moment. I looked directly at Marissa, except I found it 4 days early, which gave me time to understand what I was looking at, time to verify the information, time to ask questions about who created these files and why, and what they were planning to do with them. Marissa's face had shifted from confident wife to something calculating, sharp measuring angles and exits. Calvin Rook was already reaching for his phone, fingers moving across the screen. I let the silence stretch. 5 seconds, 10. Long enough for Calvin's hand to freeze on his phone. Long enough for Marissa to understand there was no way to stop what came next. Then I ended the silence. I reached down to the podium laptop, connected the cable already waiting there, and picked up the wine-red USB drive. I plugged the wine-red USB into the laptop, and the LED screens on both sides of the stage went white, then black, then blazed to life. The first image filled both screens in perfect high definition. 3 passport photos side by side. Same woman, same eyes, same bone structure, same small scar near the left eyebrow. 3 different names beneath each photo: Marissa Vale, Claire Bell, Nora Vance. "If these are the same person," I said into the microphone. My voice was steady now, no tremor, no confusion. 3 identities, 3 different cities, 3 different lives. The audience stared at the screens. I watched understanding ripple through the rows, the recognition that something very wrong was being revealed. Marissa sat frozen in the front row. She wasn't looking at the screens. She was looking at me. The screens shifted. Financial documents now. Bank account statements, transaction histories, wire transfers. The header read, Boston Private Bank Account number 7844339288817. Balance $3,847,629.43. All 9 victims, I said. 14 years, $3.8 million in one account alone. There are 4 other accounts. Different banks, different states, same pattern. The next slide appeared, a list of 9 names. Sandra Kowalski's first victim, 2004, Richard Wynn, 2005, Victor Hale, 2014, 7 others. My name wasn't on the list yet. I would have been number 10. The screens changed again. Video footage now. Timestamp, 2:17 a.m. November 6th, 2018. My home office captured by the security camera I'd installed in the bookshelf. Marissa at my desk, laptop open scanning documents with her phone. The image was clear enough to see what she was photographing: signature cards, legal forms, asset declarations. That's my office, I said. 8 days ago, 2 in the morning, while I was asleep upstairs. A murmur ran through the audience. The video shifted. New timestamp 1:42 a.m. November 10th, 2018. Different angle, grainier quality. My back porch captured by my neighbor's security camera, the one I'd asked to borrow footage from 3 days ago. A man on the porch face clearly visible under the motion sensor light. Blue jacket, graying hair, carrying something that looked like a lockpick kit. Calvin Rook. That's my back porch, I said. 1:42 in the morning, 4 days ago. Calvin's face had gone white. He was already half standing, calculating the distance to the nearest exit. The audio began playing. Calvin's voice recorded clear through the conference hall speakers. We need the disability records to show progressive decline over 18 months. Make sure the dates align with the asset transfers. How much evidence does it take to destroy a perfectly constructed lie? Less than you think, more than you hope. Another voice on the recording, Dr. Raymond Pike. I can backdate the assessments. It's not difficult if we coordinate the timeline. Calvin. Good. Once the guardianship is filed, we move everything within 48 hours. Arthur won't have legal standing to contest. The recording ended. Dr. Pike was staring at his hands. Dean Mallory had gone pale. Eric Vaughn was already typing on his phone, probably to his law partners, probably calculating liability. The screens shifted again. A document now. Official letterhead, United States District Court, District of Oregon. Date March 15th, 2004. Legal name change declaration. Birth name Sandra Lynn Kowalski. Legal name adopted Marissa Ann Vale. Her real name is Sandra Kowalski, I said quietly. Marissa Vale didn't exist before 2015. Before that, she was Claire Bell. Before that, Nora Vance. She's been running variations of this fraud for at least 14 years before she met me. I looked directly at her. Everything was a performance. The name, the history, the love, all of it constructed specifically to take everything I had and leave me with nothing. Marissa's hands were gripping the armrests of her seat. No calculation in her expression now. Just the flat recognition of exposure. The screens went dark for 3 seconds. Then audio began playing. No video this time, just sound. Marissa's voice recorded in what sounded like a car. Clear, unguarded, speaking to someone on a phone call. Older men always think they are loved. That's the easiest part. You make them feel seen, understood, protected. They're so grateful that someone young still wants them that they'll sign anything. The cognitive decline narrative just accelerates the timeline. Another voice, Calvin Rook. How long until you can move the assets? Marissa, 3 weeks, maybe 4. I have the medical documentation stage, the legal papers drafted. He trusts me completely. Once we file for guardianship, he won't even understand what happened. Calvin and the daughter, Marissa, she'll contest. But by then, it'll be too late. We'll be gone. The money transferred identity's changed. She can fight in court for years. We'll be in Europe. The recording ended. The auditorium was absolutely silent. No rustling, no breathing. 300 people frozen. Marissa didn't look at the screens. She looked at me. And in her eyes, for the first time since I'd met her 4 years ago, I saw something that wasn't performance. There's a moment when calculation stops, when every plan dies, when the only thing left is the truth staring back. She stood from her front row seat not to flee, but to face the room. 300 people watching her. Every eye in the hall locked on the woman whose voice had just confessed to fraud, to manipulation, to a 14-year pattern of destroying lives. Calvin Rook was already halfway to the side exit, moving fast phone pressed to his ear. The exit doors opened. 2 federal agents stepped through badges, visible blocking the doorway. Calvin stopped, turned, looked back at the stage where I stood, with the microphone, the evidence displayed on screens behind me, the wine-red USB drive still plugged into the laptop. Miles appeared from the wings, followed by Paige. She carried a leather briefcase, the documentation, the affidavits, the financial forensics. Marissa stood perfectly still in front of her seat, not running, not speaking, just standing as the walls closed in. The federal agents weren't a surprise. Miles had coordinated with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit 48 hours ago. What surprised me was Marissa not running. She walked toward the stage instead, stepping up beside me at the podium. Marissa's first words weren't defiant or defensive, just quiet, almost curious. "When did you know?" I looked at her. 4 years of marriage, 4 years of performance, and now we stood beside each other on stage before 300 witnesses with the truth displayed on screens behind us. "Since Tuesday morning," I said, when Evelyn's painting was taken down. Her eyes closed. "I never thought you would take down that painting." "I didn't. The cleaning service moved it temporarily. Pure chance." She laughed once, sharp and bitter. 14 years of planning, every variable calculated. Undone by a cleaning service and a painting I thought you'd never touch because you loved your dead wife too much. Marissa's fatal miscalculation wasn't the compartment or the USB or the security cameras. It was assuming my grief would protect her. That love for Evelyn would blind me to everything else. She'd built her entire strategy on the belief that I would never disturb anything connected to my late wife. She was right about the grief, wrong about what it protected. "Did you ever—" She stopped, started again. "Was any of it real for you?" "All of it," I said. "That was the difference between us." Paige appeared from the stage wings. She walked past Marissa without looking at her, came to stand beside me. The first time my daughter and I had stood together publicly in 4 years. No words needed. Her presence was statement enough. Marissa stepped back, understanding the geometry of that moment. She descended from the stage and returned to her front row seat, sitting perfectly still as the room watched. Miles moved to the center aisle, addressed the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your patience. Law enforcement will need statements from anyone who witnessed today's revelations. The conference is suspended." Then the systematic collapse began. Desmond Reed stood reaching for his phone. Miles intercepted him in the aisle. "Desmond Reed, your accounts are frozen as of 8:47 this morning. Federal court order. 12.6 million in transfers blocked mid-transaction." Desmond's face went gray. "On what grounds?" "Conspiracy to commit elder fraud, wire fraud, money laundering. The forensic accountant has your transaction records going back 7 years. Every dollar you move for Calvin Rook is documented. Empires don't fall to armies. They fall to one loose thread, one painting on a wall, one person who loved you enough to hide warnings you'd never find." Dean Mallory tried leaving through the side door. Paige moved to block his path. "Dean, sit down. You're not leaving." He stared at her. "Paige, I'm just— 20 years of transaction records," she said, her voice flat. "Every payment Calvin Rook made to clear your gambling debts. Every report you filed on my father's cognitive state. Every piece of intelligence you sold about his medical appointments, his asset valuations, his vulnerabilities. Miles has it all." Dean's shoulders sagged. He sat. Dr. Raymond Pike remained in his back row seat, staring at his hands. A woman approached him, Celeste Monroe, 44, the private investigator who'd found Victor Hale. She placed a folder on his lap. "Dr. Pike, these are the records of $18,500 in payments from Hearthstone Management, LLC, to your research foundation between March 2020 and September 2024. Want to explain why Calvin Rook was funding your Alzheimer's research, or Indurskos, or—" He didn't answer. Eric Vaughn stood near the exit phone, pressed to his ear, probably calling his law partners. Miles appeared beside him. "Mr. Vaughn, we have the guardianship documents you drafted, dated and prepared 6 weeks before Arthur showed any signs of cognitive decline. Care to explain how you knew to prepare those papers in advance?" Eric ended his call, said nothing. The LED screens flickered to life again. A video call connected. The face that appeared was older, worn but recognizable from the 2015 photo in Tessa's files. Victor Hale lived from Montana. "My name is Victor Hale," he said, his voice filling the hall through the speakers. I faked my suicide in 2015 because Calvin Rook tried to kill me after I threatened to expose his fraud network. This is Sandra Kowalski's 2004 federal declaration. I was her fourth victim. I helped her take down victim number 5. Then she turned on me. I've been hiding for 3 years because I knew Calvin would erase anyone who threatened him. The dead witness resurrected. Victor held up documents to the camera. These are the original wire transfers from Sandra's first operation. Medical equipment fraud, Portland 2004, $1.2 million. I have copies of everything, every victim, every transaction, every identity she used. I'm ready to testify. The screen went dark. Fraud networks collapsed from the edges inward. Small players first, then lieutenants, then the architect, standing alone with nowhere left to calculate. Calvin Rook had been sitting motionless in the third row since the video evidence began. Now he stood, smoothed his jacket, walked toward the exit with manufactured calm, the posture of a man who still believed he could control the situation. Miles stepped into his path. "Calvin Rook, we need to talk." "I'll need my attorney," Calvin said. "You'll have that opportunity." Miles gestured. 2 federal agents appeared, one on each side. "But right now, we have warrants for your arrest on 17 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, and wire fraud across 4 states. Calvin's manufactured calm fractured. For just a moment, I saw what was underneath, not rage or fear, but the cold recognition that the system he'd built for 20 years had collapsed in under 2 hours. The agents led him toward the doors. He looked back once, not at me, but out the tall windows where Portland rain fell against gray November sky. The same rain that had been falling the day this started. The same gray light. Then he was gone. The conference hall emptied in 20 minutes. Attendees filing out past federal agents, taking statements past Marissa, sitting alone in the front row, staring at nothing past the stage where the wine-red USB drive still sat, plugged into the laptop. Paige approached, handed me an envelope. Cream paper sealed my name in familiar handwriting. "From the estate attorney," she said quietly. "Evelyn left this for you. Instructions said to deliver it after the truth came out." I stared at my late wife's handwriting. She knew. She knew, Paige confirmed. "Read it when you're ready." The hall was almost empty now. Just Miles coordinating with federal agents, Paige gathering documentation, Marissa motionless in her seat, and me holding a letter from a dead woman who'd seen the truth before anyone else. I carried Evelyn's letter unopened for 2 weeks. The cream envelope stayed in my jacket pocket through police interviews, through legal consultations, through the slow process of understanding what justice actually looked like when the performance ended. 2 weeks after the conference, I sat in a law office listening to Miles recite the inventory of consequences, like a quartermaster counting supplies after battle. The rain still fell outside the windows. Portland in late November, gray light, wet streets, the kind of weather that felt permanent. Miles had folders arranged on the conference table. Paige sat beside me taking notes. The same team that had built the case now documented its resolution. Calvin Rook. Miles began reading from the first folder. Held pending federal investigation. 9 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, wire fraud, identity theft. Grand jury convenes in January. Federal prosecutor estimates 15 to 25 years if convicted on all counts. I nodded. The number felt abstract, disconnected from the reality of 4 years spent believing I was loved. Desmond Reed. Banking license suspended pending investigation by the State Financial Regulatory Board. Account freeze remains in effect. Civil suits pending from 3 other victims whose funds he moved. Eric Vaughn. State Bar disciplinary proceedings initiated. Loss of law license probable. He's cooperating with prosecutors to reduce potential criminal charges. Dr. Raymond Pike. Medical board investigation for falsifying diagnostic records. Research Foundation funding suspended. Civil liability for fraudulent assessments. Miles paused, looked at me. Dean Mallory is cooperating. He'll face reduced charges in exchange for testimony against Calvin and documentation of the surveillance network. Probably probation, restitution, community service. No jail time. 20 years of friendship, I said quietly. Valued at probation. He's providing critical evidence, Miles said. The prosecution needs his testimony to establish the timeline. Justice mechanical, not satisfying. A system of trades and reductions of cooperation agreements and sentencing guidelines, nothing that could return what was taken. Miles opened another folder. Sandra Kowalski, legally Marissa Vale, is also cooperating. Full cooperation agreement to reduce sentence. She's revealing the entire network structure, 14 years of operations, 23 total victims across multiple identities. 23. I'd known about 9. 14 more lives destroyed before mine. Each one documented, each one part of a pattern I'd been too blind to see. The prosecution is building a RICO case against Calvine's organization. Miles continued. Using Sandra's testimony to establish the enterprise structure, she'll serve time, probably 8 to 12 years with cooperation credit, but less than she deserves. And the money, Page asked. Asset recovery is complex. Multiple accounts, multiple jurisdictions. Some funds already moved offshore. The victim's restitution fund will recover maybe 40%. The rest is gone. How do you measure justice? Not in years served or licenses lost. You measure it in the difference between what was taken and what can never be returned. There's something else, Miles said, looking at Page. Your trust documentation has been validated by the court. The transfer you executed 14 months ago is legally sound. I turned to Page. What transfer? She met my eyes. After your heart attack, you were in the hospital for 3 days, then recovering at home for 2 weeks. I brought you papers to sign, told you they were updated health insurance forms, power of attorney for medical decisions. I remember signing something, I said slowly. They weren't insurance forms, Page said. They were trust documents transferring operational control of Whitaker Solutions to a revocable trust that I hold as trustee. You retained ownership, but I control all decisions, all asset movements, all major transactions. You signed them when you were exhausted barely reading. I told myself it was protection in case something happened to you, in case you couldn't make decisions. The law office was silent except for rain on windows. When did you do this? I asked. Page's voice was quiet. Right after you got out of the hospital. September 2017. 14 months before Marissa started pursuing the guardianship. She spent 4 years positioning herself to take control of a company I'd already moved out of your legal authority. Miles placed another document on the table. The guardianship petition Marissa filed would have given her control over Arthur's personal decisions and assets, but Whitaker Solutions' operational control was already held in trust. She would have gained guardianship over an empty shell. The actual assets were protected. I stared at my daughter. You didn't trust me to protect myself. I didn't trust anyone not to take advantage of you, Page said. You just had a heart attack. You were vulnerable. Marissa was attentive, too attentive. I couldn't prove anything, couldn't articulate why it felt wrong. So I protected what I could. When your daughter protects you the way you once protected her, something shifts. The circle completes. The roles don't reverse, they equalize. Thank you, as I said. Her hand found mine across the table. Miles cleared his throat. One more item. Victor Hale's situation is complicated. He provided critical evidence, the 2004 documentation that established Sandra's first fraud operation. But his own participation in the 2009 scheme will be considered by prosecutors. Sentencing guidelines are complex when the witness is also a perpetrator. What will happen to him? I asked. Probably reduced charges in exchange for testimony. Maybe 3 to 5 years credit for cooperation. He knew the risk when he came forward. Did he say anything? Miles pulled out a handwritten note. He sent this through his attorney. Just 3 sentences. I know. I accept it. Evidence for evidence, past for future. Victor Hale, who'd helped defraud a Houston widower for $400,000, who'd then lost everything when the system turned on him, who'd faked his death and hidden for 3 years, now accepting consequences as the price of redemption. The law office felt smaller, suddenly the rain louder. Paige reached into her briefcase, pulled out one more envelope. Cream paper, familiar handwriting, my name in Evelyn's careful script. You haven't read this yet, she said quietly. Maybe now is the time. I took the envelope. The seal was dated March 2nd, 2018, 6 weeks before Evelyn died, when she still had clarity, when she could still write in straight lines. She knew, I said. She knew, Paige confirmed. Read it when you're ready. I'll be right here. I left Evelyn's letter sealed for another week. Not from fear, but from the knowledge that once I read it, that would be the last new thing she would ever tell me. I wasn't ready for that final conversation yet. Dean's name appeared on my phone 3 weeks after the conference, and I sat in the F250 in the supermarket parking lot for 2 full rings before answering. Arthur, his voice sounded old or worn. I'm calling before I turn myself into my attorney tomorrow. I know you don't owe me anything. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I watched rain streak down the windshield. Then what are you asking for? Nothing. He stopped, started again. I know nothing I say will change anything, but I want you to know that in those 20 years, the friendship was real. The final decision was not. The parking lot was half empty. A woman pushed a shopping cart through the rain, head down, moving quickly. Normal people doing normal things, while my world recalibrated around the idea that betrayal and genuine friendship could exist in the same relationship. You're saying the 20 years were real and the 4 years selling me to Calvin were separate, I said. Yes. Both true at the same time. Yes. Dean's breath came heavy through the phone. I was your friend. I am your betrayer. I don't know how to reconcile those things, Arthur. I just know they're both true. I closed my eyes. I know Dean. That's why it hurts so much. He was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry, for whatever that's worth. It's worth something, I said. Not enough, but something. The call ended. I sat in the truck rain, drumming on the roof, watching steam rise from the hood. The heater ran, fogging the windows. Outside, the world continued, people shopping cars, parking life, moving forward with relentless normalcy. 20 years of fishing trips and late-night calls and standing beside each other at weddings and funerals. 20 years of friendship that was real. 4 years of systematic betrayal that was also real. Dean was right. I didn't know how to reconcile those things either. Where does friendship end and betrayal begin? Not at a single point. It's a gradient, years of gray before the final decision turns everything black. The rain intensified. I started the truck, drove home through streets that looked the same as they had before any of this started. Portland in December, wet gray, familiar. A week later, I met Paige and Tessa at the same cafe where they'd first connected. Tessa looked different, lighter. Somehow the weight of coercion lifted. Her brother had been released, charges dropped in exchange for her cooperation. She was preparing to leave Portland, start over somewhere without the shadow of Calvin's network. I wanted to thank you both, Tessa said, for believing me, for using the information I provided. Paige reached into her bag, pulled out a yellowed envelope, the one she'd kept for 10 years, the one with Tessa's handwriting from 2008. This is your letter, isn't it? Paige asked, sliding it across the table. Tessa stared at the envelope, touched it with one finger. I was 23, scared. I'd just watched my father die thinking he'd been a fool, and I knew Marissa was about to do the same thing to someone else. I didn't know what else to do. You warned him, Paige said. That's more than most people would have done. I sent it anonymously to his office. I was too afraid to put my name on it. Tessa looked at me. Did you ever see it? No, I said quietly. Paige intercepted it. Tessa's eyes moved to Paige, questioning. Paige picked up the envelope, held it for a moment, then placed it in Tessa's hand. I was 17, angry at my father for moving on from my mother's death, angry at the world. I opened it, thinking it was just some jealous ex trying to sabotage his happiness. When I read it, I convinced myself it was lies. She paused, looked at the letter, but I kept it for 10 years, through college, through our estrangement, through everything. I told myself I kept it because someday I might need proof, but really, her voice caught. It gave me something to hold on to when I thought my father no longer needed me. Your letter connected us even when we weren't speaking. Tessa folded her fingers around the envelope. Thank you for keeping it, for using it when it mattered. Thank you for writing it, Paige said. We sat together for another hour, 3 people connected by fraud and loss and the strange mathematics of guilt and redemption. Then Tessa left the letter in her pocket, heading toward whatever came next. Paige walked me to the F-250. December. Twilight, early, dark streetlights reflecting on wet pavement. I'm going back to Seattle next week, she said. I nodded. I figured. But this time, you have my phone number, and you'll use it. Not a question, a statement. I will, I said. Every week, even if it's just to tell me about the weather or what you had for dinner, stay connected. Some goodbyes aren't endings. They're adjustments, finding the right distance where love survives without suffocation. Every week, I agreed. She hugged me there on the sidewalk, holding on longer than usual. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. You're going to be okay, she said. So are you. She smiled. Yeah, I think so. I drove home through familiar streets, parked in the driveway, walked into a house that felt different now. Emptier in some ways, fuller in others. Page's trust documents sat on my desk. Miles's legal summary, the conference documentation, evidence of a life deconstructed and rebuilt. And on the table beside Evelyn's chair, the one she'd sat in every evening for 20 years, the cream envelope with her handwriting. The house was quiet. No performance, no surveillance, no careful lies. Just me and the silence and the last words my wife had left behind. I picked up the envelope, felt the weight of paper and ink and love. That night alone in the house, for the first time since the conference, I finally opened Evelyn's letter. The date was clear in her careful handwriting, March 2nd, 2018, 6 weeks before she died, when she still had enough clarity to know what she was writing. I sat in her chair, unfolded the pages, and began to read. Evelyn's letter said what I needed to hear, that she'd known something was wrong, that she'd left clues hoping I'd find them when I was ready, that she trusted me to save myself. 6 weeks later, I finally understood what she meant. I made coffee that Sunday morning, not herbal tea, the first deliberate choice I'd made in 6 weeks. That felt like mine alone. The house was quiet. December light filtered through the kitchen window, pale and clean. Outside, Owen was mowing the lawn for the last time that year, pushing the old Toro in straight lines across brown grass that wouldn't grow again until spring. Owen had been doing my yard work for 8 years. I didn't know his last name. He didn't know mine. We'd never had a conversation longer than weather and payment, but he showed up every other Sunday without fail, did the work, left the yard better than he found it. I knocked on the kitchen window. He looked up, face weathered from years of outdoor work eyes squinting against the winter sun. I raised my hand in acknowledgement. He nodded, once went back to mowing. That's simple. Nothing more needed. 2 men who understood work, silent seasons ending and beginning again. I carried my coffee to the study. Evelyn's seascape painting still leaned against the wall where I'd left it 6 weeks ago. The landscape of gray ocean and darker sky, the one she'd loved enough to hang above the desk where I worked. The painting was heavier than I remembered, or maybe I was just older, feeling the weight of things I used to lift without thinking. I positioned it carefully over the desk, aligned the frame with the marks on the wall where it had hung for 20 years. The painting settled into place like it had never been moved, right where it belonged. I stepped back, looked at the gray ocean, the storm gathering on the horizon. Evelyn had chosen this painting because it reminded her of the Oregon coast where we'd spent our honeymoon. I'd never particularly liked it, too dark, too moody. But it was hers, and that had always been enough. I turned to close the wooden panel over the secret compartment in the wall. The compartment was empty now, the wine-red USB long gone, its contents copied, cataloged, entered into evidence. My hand was on the panel when I saw it, a small piece of paper caught in a crack in the wood. Thin diary paper, the kind Evelyn used for her personal notes. It had been there longer than the USB, I could tell, by the way the paper had yellowed, by the dust settled into the fold. I pulled it free carefully. Evelyn's handwriting. Dated October 2015, 3 years before she died, long before Marissa, before the fraud, before any of this began. I sat down on the floor back against the wall below the rehung painting and read, Arthur, if you find this, you may be taking down the painting for an important reason, or repainting because someone asked you. Always do that. I created this compartment to keep notes I write on nights I'm worried and don't want to worry you. If one day you read this and I'm no longer here, please don't blame yourself for loving the wrong person. You didn't love the wrong person. You just loved with everything you had. That was never wrong. I love you, Evelyn. Protection isn't always warning someone away from danger. Sometimes it's leaving a message that says, whatever you choose, you chose with love, and that was enough. I folded the paper, placed it in my breast pocket close to my heart. Evelyn had known me well enough to understand that I would blame myself, that I would dissect every moment, every decision, looking for the point where I should have known better. She'd left this note years before any danger appeared, a preemptive absolution for choices I hadn't yet made. I stood slowly, looked up at the seascape painting, the storm on the horizon, the dark water, the suggestion of something beyond the frame. And for the first time in years, I smiled. There are practical things I learned through all of this. Things worth sharing if you're listening. Check real estate titles before marriage county recorder offices have public access to property transfers. Credit freezes are free through Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has resources for elder financial abuse. These things matter, but the real lesson isn't in the practical steps. It's this: pay attention, ask questions. When someone loves you, they don't ask you to stop being curious about inconsistencies. They don't get defensive when you notice patterns. They don't isolate you from people who care about you, or dismiss your instincts as confusion. True love doesn't need you blind. It needs you whole. Marissa's herbal tea sat unopened in the pantry for 6 weeks before I threw it away. Every night she'd made it, I'd drunk it trusting that caring for me meant caring about me. I'd confused the performance of love with love itself. Evelyn never made me tea. She made me coffee black the way I liked it. She argued with me about politics and money and whether the house needed repainting. She questioned my decisions and expected me to question hers. She left notes in secret compartments absolving me of blame for things I hadn't done yet. That was love. Messy, argumentative, questioning love. The other thing was theater. Sometimes the truth doesn't come crashing in like a door flung open. Sometimes it just falls out from behind a picture you've looked at every day and never taken down. I stood in my study, coffee in hand, Evelyn's painting, back where it belonged, her note in my pocket. Outside, Owen finished the lawn, loaded his mower, drove away without knocking. Next Sunday, or the one after, he'd be back. The seasons would turn, the grass would grow. Life would continue with its relentless, ordinary beauty. And I would pay attention. Comment number 1, if you think I handled this correctly. Number 2, if you have a relative who needs to hear this story. Number 3, if you've ever found something small that changed how you saw someone you loved. Pay attention, ask questions, protect the people you love by teaching them to protect themselves. And believe that true love never needs you to stop asking questions. That's the lesson Evelyn left me. That's the truth that fell from a painting I'd looked at every day for 20 years. Sometimes the answers we need are already there. We just have to be ready to see them. I've been telling this story for a while now, and every time I get to this part, I have to stop and sit with it. Because here's what I know, after everything, after the red USB, after the fake passports, after Sandra Kowalski's real name lit up that screen in front of 300 people, trust is not weakness. Loving completely is not stupidity. I did both of those things, and I don't regret either one. What I regret is the years I stopped asking questions, the mornings I waved off the numbers that didn't add up, the phone calls from my daughter. I let go to voicemail. Don't be me. Look at your documents. Read every line item. And if something doesn't feel right at the dinner table, ask. You are allowed to ask. There's a verse I've come back to a lot since all this happened. Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. I didn't guard mine well enough, but I got a second chance. Not everyone does. My personal opinion. Financial betrayal in a marriage is one of the loneliest things a person can survive. Not because of the money, because of the silence it leaves behind in a house you thought you knew. These are the family stories revenge never prepares you for, the quiet kind where no one raises their voice and everything falls apart in a conference room on a Tuesday morning in November. These family stories revenge teaches us that the most dangerous betrayals wear the most familiar faces. And in the end, these family stories revenge remind us the truth always finds a way out, even from behind a painting on a wall. If this story of father revenge moved something in, you share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. If you know a father revenge situation happening right now in someone's home, gently step in. And if this kind of father revenge story is something you want more of, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell. Every week I bring you real human stories about trust, family, and the price of silence. Drop a comment below, tell me your number 1, 2, or 3, and where you're watching from. I genuinely read every single one. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. It means more than I can say. And a note before you go, the stories on this channel contain fictional elements created purely for reflection and education. If that's not the kind of content you're looking for, no hard feelings. Close out and find what speaks to you, but if you're still here, I'll see you in the next one.